A dungeon with a labyrinth full of terrifying monsters is a fantasy, and the lifelong friendship between a boy and a girl that began in childhood is also a kind of fantasy. In a particular dungeon, a boy. He is holding a sword to deal with some monsters. He clears every monster blocking his path and presses on toward the dungeon. After moving the monsters, he says he's almost there. A 17-year-old swordsman, he has ventured into the depths of the dungeon for a specific goal, moving inside to the deepest part. The Dungeon King is waiting and Van goes in. In the Dragon King's chamber, the dragon welcomes him. It is black. This is called obsidian. The dragon names the young man as its opponent, but Van stays silent and stares straight into the dragon's eyes. Dragon tells Van he's sweating buckets and laughs at him. Van tells it not to say that. The outside of the dungeon is very hot, so he asks the dragon to cool him with its wings. The dragon agrees to cool him, and Van feels much better afterward. The dragon says it does not want to return to the human world, and Van asks why it is in dragon form and whether that speech is some kind of role play. The dragon says they have not seen each other for a while, and it wanted to surprise him for a bit. Van is not surprised, so the dragon says it will change back into human form right away because Van is no fun. She returns to normal and is a girl called Ryuka. He casually hands Ryuka the bag his mother gave him and tells Ryuka it came from his mother. She opens the bag and finds vegetables. She protests that she thought she told him she can only eat meat, but since it's from Auntie, she decides to eat them. Van tells her she needs a balanced diet and says the turtles at home eat veggies too. Ryuka says she is a dragon, though. He thanks him for bringing the food, then asks Van if he wants a drink. Van agrees and they reunite. He is the strongest Black Dragon King, and Van is the only young man who conquered this dungeon. They are childhood friends. While they eat, Van tells her that when he visits, her subordinates always go along with him and ask if she can do something about it. Ryuka, shocked, asks whether they are rough with him, and he says no. It's just that each time he visits, he has to beat them up, and he feels sorry for them. They tell him it's their job as dungeon monsters, and then one reminds the others that Van Koon is the king's friend, so it's rude to try to hit him. The person who always tries to beat Van says they had no choice, because they were only doing their jobs, and had to check everyone entering the dungeon. The monster admits it missed Van, and asks whether Minasan is truly earnest, and might be among them. And a girl monster tells them to keep their voices low, so they are not heard. Monster Gossip says Ryukun and Van have known each other for 10 years at Vankon's house, but so far, they can only meet once a month, all the more. Someone keeps looking at them and says childhood friends are great. The girl monster says she had that once too, and everyone says she is lying. Van tells Ryuka it is time for him to go, thanks him for bringing the vegetables, and asks whether it is too soon to go home, then says she already prepared the game for them to play, and he replies he has to go home because he has a lot to do today. Every monster thinks its synchronization level is amazing. Ryuka tells Van she can see him, can't help stopping him briefly to play a game with her, and asks him to confirm whether he will come next month. Someone suggested tomorrow, and then he replied, apologizes to her for not telling her that. He moved to a town near the dungeon and joined the Adventurers Guild today, so he will be living there now. Ryuka is shocked and asks if he really lives nearby, and he says becoming an adventurer had always been his dream, and he wondered if he could do it here while all the monsters thought it meant he could visit every day. She asks him directly whether he moved here to see her every day, and whether he felt lonely, then asks if he has any friends besides her while he tries to answer. She says it can't be helped and lets him come here any time. They both say goodbye to each other and Ryukas. She'll see him tomorrow. All the monsters think they're such an odd pair, but it doesn't matter. Being together is so sweet. Tell them it's time to return to their positions, and decide they will support those two childhood friends. Some say they will be beaten badly and left with physical wounds. The girl monster says there is nothing to be done because it is Monosa after all, and the head monster says it will beat anyone who says such things about them. On the bottom floor of a dungeon, all the monsters sit at a table, and Ryuka asks them for a report. One monster says that yesterday adventurers reached the 7th and 8th floors. Another says they were all C ranks and the monsters were able to recover some power from them. The girl monster says even the new ones are making it pretty far, and maybe it is time to change the traps. Ryuka suggests having the first division handle that to see if it helps, and everyone agrees. Ryuka asks the Lady Dragon Queen if she agrees. Is zoning out right now. Monster tells Ryuka she's not listening right now, and Ryuka keeps staring at the clock. The Lady Dragon Queen then says it's hardly surprising, and Ryuka pants. It's about time for Van to come, said the Lady Queen. Pointing out that she'll see him every day, she says she should try to make a little progress, but Ryuka yells at her that it's not like that. Ryuka tells her to relax because the announcers will let them know if any adventurers show up. She insists she's not waiting for him, and the monster agrees. Ryu could make it clear that Van is just a friend. She tells them it was 10 years ago when she was traveling with her family and got caught in a storm, leaving her stranded alone. She couldn't fly because of her injuries and didn't know what to do. Van arrived, asked if she was okay, and rescued her. And after that, they became best friends. They played together every day, but at night she felt homesick and cried. He went to the village alone to help her find a home, and it was hard. He told her he was really surprised when she turned someone in, and she laughed. He told her he was so glad to have found her family. She replied she was thankful, and then they parted ways. Next time he would come to her house so they could play together. Meanwhile, all the monsters ask her if it is precious, and she replies. Since then, she became a dungeon boss. Van grew stronger so he could visit her, and now she is completely used to it. Ryoka says she has been thinking about it ever since then. She tells them this is the end of the story, that they were only childhood friends and nothing more, and all the monsters thank her for telling them all this. Jessica angrily asks them if they got it. The Lady Monster Queen says she is so full right now, and the big monster says it's too cool for a 7-year-old and that everyone would fall for him. Luca asks them to listen to her, and all the monsters say it's scary when she transforms, only that part. She is told that it doesn't think she should let Vance see that face, and Ryuka tells him to shut it. An announcement declares a new adventurer has entered the dungeon, and Ryuka returns to normal. The dungeon holds countless dangers, but adventurers come every day seeking fame and riches, and so far the best have only reached the 45th floor because the dungeon is huge, with over 100 floors and all the usual monsters and traps. One monster tells Ryuka she does not need to be so jittery because it can tell when it is Van. An announcement reports that a few adventurers have entered the dungeon, and it continues up to the 8th floor where a monster says there he is, and a female monster says she will turn off the announcer. The monsters leave, and one monster's goal is to hold the van for 10 minutes, while Ryuka tells them to have fun. She's all alone in their van. He enters and she is shocked at how fast he arrived. He asks if she's in the middle of something. Ryuka says not at all. It's fine. Then she asks if he made sure to record his log, and he says yes. As usual, he recorded it. Van keeps laughing, so she asks him what's so funny, and he says he was just thinking he'll go to Bach here tomorrow too, like old times. He finds it gross and asks what's going on, then tells her she doesn't need to go that far, so he realizes she was affected too after seeing that smile when he left, and understands she's been alone as well, basically stuck in that dungeon. Share a smile. Even the monsters spying on them smile. In Darn Dungeon, Ryuka and Van are playing a game. She brings another. With hair like the Queen Undine's, a female knight is complete and victory is hers. That will not happen quickly because he has the world's most powerful wizard as his master, and magic as family, and his standing is through the roof. Both keep playing while the monsters pause, unsure what to do. In this game, the player aims for the strongest rebirth and by dying gathers allies and messes with monsters, which seems pretty fun. Van makes Ryuka's allies kicked her out of the party and took all her money, and the monster was so happy. The other one tells him to mess with him back and gives him a buff, and it is pretty strong. The monster says he does not like living that way, and the head monster says it is just a game, saying he does not know what the youngsters like but sees no reason to get upset about it. The monster looks at the dragon lady. She is so happy and goes Ryuka. The heroine betrays the manor hero, triggering her mass harm mode, and the monster tells them to leave it as is, calling it a terrible game. The monster says it's great they're having fun, but both of them are 17 now. At this rate, one would normally have made more progress by now. They will never be able to do it. They are going to share their love, and Ryoka says in the game she will step in there and set the mood for everyone. Half-man, half-bird creatures and their songs can charm anyone who hears them. Vance. He never tried, and she plays the song. So Van moves closer to her and says he finds her strange, and looking at her makes him feel hot. She says her confidence is strong and asks him to come closer and hold her tight. Monsters shout their names, and Rika says the news will be coming up in the next few days. Monsters shout their names, and Rika says the news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. The news will be coming up in the next few days. This is dangerous. The idea alone is making her nervous, and the monsters are wondering what dangerous thoughts she has. We'll come back. Interrupting, he says he personally doesn't think it will work out that way. To watch their wholesome, bitter, and sweet days, it worries that forcing them to share love could ruin their relationship, so they would no longer be able to watch them love as they do now. And the monster agree with its point. The lady monster says she knows that and wants to keep watching over them, of course, but after 10 years of feelings, even if it means using force, she wants to give the lady dragon queen some happiness. Will says that if she's thinking that much about her, it won't say anything more. I don't think sharing that kind of stuff is the right way to handle this, so it's being left out. Meanwhile, Yuka says she wants this scene to be full of happiness, and the monster asks her not to add her own emotions so casually right now because that is absolutely her priority. One monster pulls out a guitar and starts to play, and the other monster suddenly looks very worried. She tells them to plug their ears. No roses will be allowed to grow, and there is no stopping now. She begins, play the acoustic guitar to set the mood, but Ryuka's head starts to spin while the monsters think they are reacting. It will work, but Van can't take it anymore. A man says Harpy Sand's behavior is wrong, and that he has no idea whether she is practicing or actually singing. And he says the real ones are incredible. He has not heard one in a long time and is puzzled to see her singing over there. In this world, half-human, half-bird beings are largely split into two groups, sirens and harpies. Sirens have beautiful bodies and voices, and their songs fascinate people to the point of madness, while harpies have horrifying bodies and voices and are brutal birds that sing to catch meat and sheep. This is one of the worst ones. The lady monster asks how they knew about it, and the other one says it's in her name. Then Wool enters and asks how it went, and the monster says not to worry because it failed. As they debate, Ryuka asks what she thinks she is doing, tells them not to tell her they were watching them the whole time. She angrily calls them idiots. She says they are. It will be gone. Asks her to be gentle with them. Van asks them all to come and play with them instead because more people make it more fun. Someone asks if they should play with them. The monsters ask each other what to do, and one says it's fine for them to join and they should be left alone. Wool says 6 people will make it crowded. Minnow-san is huge, and Okun is fat. Lady monsters push them all to play, and they all sit together to play the game. Meanwhile, Ryuka tells Van his shoulders are touching her, and he says he can't help it. There are too many people here. And, yes, that's fine. Monsters tell them to wipe the smiles off their faces. After all, wholesomeness is best. She hands Van the 9th volume, and he takes it because she knows he won't be able to stop, and will come crying to her asking to read the next volume, and he admits that's kind of scary. After giving him the book, she tells him to read it, and he says he heard her, and then he says goodbye to her. After he leaves, Ryuka stays quiet for a moment, and the monster says it is another precious day. The lady monster calls the queen, making Ryuka angry, and he asks why this is happening so suddenly. Ryuka says, Ryuka thinks she might have pushed him too hard and worries he was annoyed when she lent him so much at once and wonders if he will read it, while the monster finds her delicate and thinks she looks cute like this. Then Wolkin says he was sure it was fine since it was her recommendation, but she still says she should not have done that. And the lady monster tells Ryuka that, in other words, she wants to watch Van read so she should stay with him all the time and marry him. Ryuka is too worried about it. So one of the monsters says it has something that might help her, the enchanted monitor. It expected this and assembled it from parts scavenged in the dungeon. Oken brought the monitor and oversees the dungeon traps. Someone turns the monitor on and tells her it can show Van Koon in real life while he stays none the wiser, and that it can also record. The other monster asks what recording means, and the lady monster says it is basically the same as his usual crystal ball and Oken set. So Ryuka can keep an eye on what Van does. Ryuka says she's unsure. She doesn't like peeking into someone's life like this, and she isn't like them. Peeking at Van while he reads the boom at night, and then, Yons, Van says the book is good and Ryuklid shows good taste in books. It's late, so he should go to sleep. The next, Stay Van meets Ryuka and says the book was really good, and he'll read the next one today. And Ryuka laughs and says she knows. The monsters are peeking at them and say it's good the Lady Queen had no reason to worry, and that everyone is grateful. She says she wants to have a look at that monitor herself, and Okiko says it is one of a kind, so it is a no. He is sure she has something terrible in mind and calls her an idiot bird. The lady monster says there is nothing bad in her mind and she just wants to peep on him bathing, and Oken says that is what he means. Van leaves and Ryuka see him again as he hums a song. It's vegetables again, so she tells him to eat some meat now. 3 days later, a girl comes peeking at him, and the dragons ask what she is doing. The lady monster says she thought she had been acting strange, but she has been spying on Van Koon the whole time. Ryuka says Van keeps his personal life private, so she suspects he might be hiding something like a new girlfriend he's been spending time with and started watching him. But over the last 3 days, apart from him just being around, she hasn't seen him get close to any girl, and she even thought he might grumble about her in his sleep, while the monster thinks she's taking it too far and never lets things go when something bothers her. That may be true, but Van does not. Feeling a little down? Late yesterday he was reading again, so maybe he just needs sleep. His face looks very swollen. Then the monster asked her to turn off the monitor and look in the mirror. Meanwhile, a few men meet Van and tell him they will listen while the monsters in the dungeon are thinking. Who are they? Claims they are gilded adventurers, and he has beaten them up several times. Meanwhile, Van tells them his childhood friend has been feeling down. When he saw her yesterday, she had bags under her eyes, and he wonders if she can't sleep. The monster says they are both worried about the same thing, so they talk about charm points. Lucas indirectly tells Van that this does not concern her, and that he is foolish to worry so much while the people are still alive. Those who came to meet Van say it sounds concerning and asks whether that childhood friend is a girl, then tells she's a girl, and the guys ask him to let them meet her sometime because he'll never get this chance again to meet a real-life female friend. They get very excited and say they will not allow those men near the Lady Dragon Queen and will tell them to tone it down. Then Okun says this is different when it comes to imagining a bad situation, while Van tells the guys he will not let them meet her or be mean to her. The son angrily tells Van to tell them he won't let them meet her. Number. A quick look is fine, and the other man tells him to stop because he's bothering Van. I feel sorry for Van because he has no luck with women. He is a broken, sad little man. While Van thinks he won't let him meet Ryuka. He is pleased that Van refused them and says he protected the Lady Queen from those evil fellows. The masked man tells Van sitting here worrying won't help, and if he talks to her, he'll see there's nothing to worry about. Ryuka, stop spying on him and talk to him. Wool says that would be best, Mino-san. People say the Lady Dragon Queen was almost always the one peeking at Van, but Ryuka says she wasn't spying, only a little curious, and Okun says it's good the monitor doesn't give itself away, that they saw Van looking at someone, and he's sure it was a coincidence. He says he has been sensing this presence lately. Bokaku. He says he had to use a small amount of magical energy to transmit the image, but they underestimated Van Koon's perception. He stayed here so long that his senses became more reliable than the walls, is staring directly into the camera and repeatedly saying, Ryusi. Using her dragon tail, she breaks the monitor because she doesn't want to see Van glaring at her. Van, he meets her and tells her that if she was worried about that, he would not read the books. If he did not want to, he would have told her and said that she would, worried she lost sleep. Ryuka says she's also been staying up late reading by the entrance to her room. In a certain dungeon, novice adventurer Van, a childhood friend of the black dragon Ryuka, makes his way to the bottom floor, then goes in and says it is another day and another clear, and summons his strength to run even harder. He says he's here and they shouldn't flatter him but should meet him head on. Break open some kind of puzzle door and today Ryuka might want to play chess or cards, and fishing on the 85th floor could be fun, so Van makes plans along the way. The 27th floor is a cave. When he arrives, a girl is already waiting for him, and he sees him. He sees her half-dressed and she asks for his help. He asks if she is all right, and she says she is in the monster's hands. They strip her and her companions abandon her. Van feels sorry to hear this and gives her some healing herbs that will help her. He walks away and tells her to take care of herself, and the girl yells that he can't leave her like this and asks him to take her to the entrance. He thinks Ryuka is waiting for him, but he can't help himself and tells her to come here. The girl believes everything is going according to plan and says there isn't a boy alive who wouldn't fall for her if she keeps doing things like this to boys. He lifts her. She asks him to put her down and not treat her like luggage. He says he can make it back carrying her if he runs, and she says they are on the 27th floor and her body won't hold up, so she needs to be put down. She will defeat this troublesome adventurer and prove to the Lady Dragon Queen that she can be useful. Her name is Saki-san. As a monster, she uses people and then takes their lives. Van takes her, reaches the surface and asks him to wait because she doesn't want to go home yet tonight. Van says it's noon and then yells. She read the room a bit and says that's why he's not popular, betting he doesn't even have any friends, let alone a girlfriend. Van asks her why she's throwing shade after asking for his help, and something's not right about her. The Easter came to check on him since he was pretty late, but they found him with a girl, so they said it was pretty weird. Oken says a girl was appointed here recently to the Lady Monster, and she is trying to win Van Koon among all men. And Wool says only they and the Lady Dragon Queen's parents know they are childhood friends. The Lady Monster suggests they go tell her, but Oken says absolutely not. To keep the arrangement in the dungeon must stay secret. No one but them can ever know, and if the humans found out, Van's standing as an adventurer would be in danger. The board wants them to wait, so for now, they must watch. Wall says one person knowing wouldn't be that bad and asks Mino-san what he thinks. Mino-san is furious with that girl because someone is trying to come between childhood friends. He wants to punish her. Mino hates her completely. Girls like both her and Oak. Pleased to express himself, he thinks it's great, and the Lady Monster warns against indulging him. Van was taken out by someone like her, so he doesn't know about the Lady Queen. Wool says it shouldn't be a problem and asks them to look over there. Saki-san spreads her legs and Van asks what she's trying to do. The Lady Monster says the new girl is certainly a hard worker. Van asks if she wants to share her love with him, and she asks how he knows. He replies that he can tell from the tattoo on her stomach. Now that he found out, it doesn't even matter. With his skills, she thought that because he was a healthy young man, she could easily take care of him. She then said she was too bad to make him fall in love with her. She bows and says he doesn't have to say it out loud. She already knows. No matter what she tries, she always fails, and has been removed from so many dungeons that this was the only one willing to hire her. To keep her place here, she must use every trick she knows. Begging him to give her his absolute truth, she warns that if she does not meet her quota, she will be removed from the dungeon too, and now she tries to persuade him with tears. The Lady Monster asks Okun how old she is, and he tells her she is 27 and that he is older than her. Only the Lady Dragon Queen could be so assertive, and he didn't want to see her reduced to that. Sun can't take it any longer. He's really angry and says that's enough. They don't need any more girls. He tries to. It's not great, but Van, Mino-sans abruptly says goodbye. Having earned the right to pass, he tells the truth. Get going, the Lady Queen Dragon is waiting. Van rushes to meet Ryuha and tells Saki not to chase her. Meanwhile, Saki says she never knew he was that strong, and she wouldn't have stood a chance. She understands he is the Lady Queen's favorite. The Lady Dragon Queen asked Saki to handle him because they cannot oppose him, and they won't remove her just for a mistake. Mino-san tells him that Saki should take her time, do her best, and never go near Van again. Saki wonders why he was so kind to her since he protected her with his own body earlier, and she thinks this bull has a thing for her. San says he's totally not her type, while Mino thinks if he doesn't get back, he won't be able to witness their precious love and says Saki is so annoying. Seeing the van, Lucas says he took too long, then he sighed. She asks what the big sigh meant when they had just met. says he's just relieved and she isn't. Ignore him, whatever he is trying to say. Adventurers earn money by selling rare items like gold, silver, and treasure. They also sell items on special request, such as monster horns and scales, which the guild buys for money. The person who is best at it is simply the person who is best at it. I, in a metal body, ask Van whether he is heading for the dungeon, and the other man with him says people go there every year and most high-level requests have already been taken. He asks if that's right, says the new recruits start on the beginner floors scavenging healing herbs for pennies, and tells Van that if he wants to move up the ranks, he has to work for it. Van thinks that most requests involve the dungeon, he thinks. He tells Ryuka, so he wonders if he can bring back some things from the dungeon. Ryuka says adventurers must go out of their way to get her permission, and so that he can take any item or treasure he wants. They only have it to bring into the adventures anyway, and in return they take their equipment and powers, so it's a win-win. Vance is all right. Ryuka spots some monster drops, asks which ones they want, and checks the list. Those are what they are looking for. Healing herbs, lizard man tails, slime, goblin claws, minotaur horns, harpy feathers, orc fangs, and kobold hands. The monster asks them to give the creatures a break. Van says he started to feel bad for beating them up every day. Ryuka says they are fine because her powers heal them. And then she gets serious and says if he really needs the treasure, she would prefer they go to a floor no one has been to yet. She doesn't want to. So they decide to go together right away, and she will take him to a nice place. Walking to a spot on the floor where Vance used to play with Ryuka, he reminds her of it and she says it feels nostalgic. Van says it is a little late to bring this up, but it could be bad if someone saw them together like this. Ryuka, the Dragon Queen, replies that it should be fine and she is not worried about it. No one is around to see them. Van says that, now that she mentioned it, monsters usually appear when he comes through here. Go! Ryuka replies that they are slacking off at work. A little while, Mino-san told everyone they would have to move to a higher floor for a while because someone made a mess on the 27th floor recently and repairs were needed, and the lady monster said she was leaving it to them while the monsters said they would get rid of everything for her and were willing to help. Her private rendezvous doesn't get interrupted while Mino-san is thinking, though others really wanted to eavesdrop on their conversation along the way. When Ryuka and Van reach floor number 70, they find all the rooms hidden. And Van, shocked, says he always just passed through and never noticed a place like this. This is where her dad left his treasure hoard. He built the dungeon. And Van says it's a mess she needs to clean up because it's not his treasure and not his problem. I asked her how her dad was, and she said he is doing well. Since he retired, he has been traveling the world with her mom and enjoying himself. She tells him that if he finds a treasure he likes, he can take it while the monsters watch them again. While searching for the treasure, a large slime-like monster appears, and Van asks what it is. A powerful monster had appeared, and no one knew it could show up on such a low floor. These are indiscriminate creatures born from the dungeon's power. Usually they appear only on the middle floors. He asks Mino-san what they should do because the monster will hurt Ryuka and Van, and powerful monsters form the dungeon's structure, so the lower the floor, the worse they are, and there are so many on this floor that the whole dungeon could cave in if they are not careful. No, San says he knows, and their duty is still to protect the Lady Queen, even if it costs them their lives. The monsters rush the powerful monster to bring it down. San tells everyone to pack it in, but until they, on their move, Van finishes the monster and asks Ryuka if it's all right to finish it because it looks pretty unfriendly. And Ryuka says that's fine. She doesn't really know what they were either, and her dad warned her they were dangerous. Vance says, okay, he'll keep finishing them while Mina, master sighs. Mina says that now, after thinking it over, Van is stronger than the four of them, and Oken says they will leave lower floor exterminations to him from now on. The lady monster says it's precious to watch him mess with her while protecting the Lady Queen, and Oken asks her if nothing shakes her. Meanwhile, the whole board arrives and Saki says, work to everyone. Mino-san says she's the same girl from before, asks why she's there, and she says, just as she was heading to work, she heard a loud noise and went to check. Sanka-san still believes Mino-san likes her. She tries to see what is happening there, but Mino-san stops her from leaving, and tells her she must not look outside because the Lady Queen uses the 70th floor to plan in complete secrecy. No matter how friendly they appear, only the board may watch. Suki says, okay, why does he have to hug her like that? She thinks this bull really likes her, and Lady Queen tells them they're going over there, saying it looks like they're up to something fun and that she sort of wants to watch them now. That's the last monster, and they should find the treasure now, he asks. Yuka seems to enjoy this more than he does, and she laughs, saying she definitely is. After that, he brings him to the treasure ship, says it's a bit too big, and Ruka says, fuck, then apologizes to him. She thought it was a shock and felt like her heart would explode. He wonders whether Van noticed it too, and whether Van's heart is racing. Pointing to the object she tripped on, she says its color shows it is the legendary metal. He feels amazing after finding it, and she angrily says it is a statue of her dad. Van picks it up and asks if he can have it, and she agrees, but only in her heart. She wants to give it to him because it belongs to her dad. Wool says that was barely wholesome, and the lady monster says this is frustrating, but Oken says they still saw something nice. Minosen says he wants to go watch too, but he is stuck with Suki. The adventure. The guild is in an uproar over what Van brought back, and everyone is shocked he brought something insane. In the market, a man greets Van Koon while thinking he should bring Ryuka and meat pie next time. Then he bumps into a girl and apologizes. And she apologizes back, saying it was her fault for not watching where she was going, that it's her first time in town and she got a bit carried away. And when some guys call for her to hurry, she says she is coming. Please ask any questions you have. Also an adventurer, he suggests they help each other, and they agree to meet at the dungeon. Ro walks away while the man with her asks if the other man was bothering her, but she says no, he wasn't bothering her. She just bumped into him by accident. The man with her walks away, saying the other man is strong. Ruka says Van and she aren't like that. She still thinks he would react, Ben. It's unclear why her queen is upset. Addressing her lady dragon queen, she says her lips look very cute in their own way, and Ryuka says talking to her is pointless. Yuka was referring to the other day when she tripped and fell on top of Van, and Harpy said, the scene felt tense because if she had slipped a bit more, she would have shared her love. Ryuka tells her to wait because she has no idea what Harpy is talking about and knows they are peeping on them. Ryuka gets angry and says she will punish the 4 idiots later and will get a sudden chill follows. Harpy asks Ryuka if she is upset because Van seemed completely unfazed after something so good happened between them, and Ryuka says no and calls her an idiot bird. She stands and explains she did not want him to feel anything. But this is the kind of moment that should make anyone take notice, and his lack of any reaction is upsetting, because she wanted him to show some response. She says Van is definitely a bit of a blockhead for a boy, and doesn't know why she dislikes how the Dragon Queen affects him, since he seems too used to being around the Lady Dragon Queen, even though they are childhood friends, and that is not a good thing. Gaga asks what she means, and she replies that the problem is how to make Van's heart race, then adds they might need the Lady Dragon to show some skin. Ropey says Van should react to that and wants to see it too, achieving 2 things at once. She angrily tells her to stop, while Harpy wonders if she went too far. Then Ryuka asks her if she thinks her queen could do that because it seems she has feelings for Vancouver. She gets upset and tells Harpy she should have asked for advice, while Harpy thinks she's being irrational but finds it cute. Many thanks to Lady Dragon Queen, despite her bad mood. This marks the start of a chance to get an event that is guaranteed to happen in any situation. Start with an incident where the girl causes the boy trouble, then a tender moment when someone accidentally drinks a magic potion and their feelings awaken, and finally a body swap where sharing love leaves them no choice but to marry. Harpy's experience shows they perceive distance differently, which has made things awkward. But this is an important issue. Now is the time to fully support the events that can help close the gap. Thank you for watching. It's still early, not even noon yet, and the other monster interrupts while Oken tells Harpy-san to get ready because an enemy is here, who tells them that an adventurer has broken the record by reaching the 45th floor. On the other side, the same girl who bumped into Van Koon defeats the Guardian on the 45th floor, and says that is why A-class adventurers couldn't make it here. She says it as if they are the first ones, and the man with her says he is coming for the Black Dragon Queen. Van Koon says Andari Man Gold is in town. A man asks Van Koon if he's never heard of him, and Van Koon says he was raised in the countryside, so that kind of news was rare. The man says he is a famous adventurer who has left behind countless legends. That is why they call him that. He has conquered dungeons all over the world and once marched alone into a fort held by 1,000 bandits. Even the strongest monsters cannot match his strength, and people say his skills are far beyond theirs. He tells all the A-class adventurers are feeling down right now, and today a stash of gold was taken into the nearby dungeon. They might not even know he defeated the dungeon's ruler. Meanwhile, Harper tells Oaken they have finished evacuating the non-combat monsters, and Oaken says all they can do now is wait for those adventurers to arrive. He will ask about Inferno-kun, and Minozan tells him he will be fine, that he has been admitted, is undergoing treatment, and his life is no longer in danger. Cocoon says he has some information on those two adventurers. The great swordsman Golde and his follower Sylvia, who supports him with buffs and healing. People have heard rumors about this legendary man, and Okun says they have reportedly conquered countless dungeons, but never taken any treasure, while Wool says their aim is not treasure, but the Lady Dragon Queen, who is a big problem for them. When the monsters ask how long it will take him to arrive, Minasan says he beat an inferno in one hit, and doubts it will be long. Meanwhile, the Lady Dragon Queen arrives, and the monsters tell her to stay below, but she refuses because they would be the first to reach the bottom floor after Van and she wants to watch. Oaken asks why she is excited since they came for her, and she is in danger. Ryuka says it's fine if they lose. She will interfere, and today she will watch over them instead. Minosan tells her to go hide inside. Contrast. Gold and this girl walk through the dungeon, and when Minosan and his companions finally come face to face with them, Minosan asks if he is the legendary Gold and Gold. Yes, this applies, and he is the only legendary man. He thinks he's the kind of person who would say it himself. Gold says they have come here to finish the Black Dragon Queen, so let them pass. The monster says they won't allow it and will oppose him. Wool says he'll go first. People call him a legend, but that is usually exaggerated. Amid this, Harpy asks if he knows, saying she has always wondered how he does it. It will come and begin running toward the gold, but gold. The attack was too powerful and knocked him flat to the floor with a single blow. Old says people often accuse him of bluffing, but the legends are true. He tries to beat the Harpy, but she flies away. Ask Wool if he's all right, and he tells them to shut up. Gold believes he only felt a bump from the splash, which is a reasonable defense for the soldiers on the lower floors. Minosan tells Harpy to help Oaken protect the Lady Queen. Gold tells Sylvia he will not need support, so she can fall back. The monster got meaner when it came face to face. Nissan thinks this man is incredible because he won 50 times in an instant and showed someone could rival the Vancouver Goldies. They are stronger than any dungeon boss he has ever fought, and he is getting excited to mess with the Black Dragon Queen while he is still alive, to challenge the strong. Challenging him was the only thing that made the strong man happy, but he had grown too powerful, and years had passed without a worthy opponent, so this dungeon was his last hope. Gold says he will make the move now that he knows their strength. He refused to accept defeat by the Walmino and believed only Van Koon could make him go all out. He draws his sword and defeats Minosan in one stroke, and Mino shouts that they will protect the place they belong to. It is crumbling in gold. Sylvia should watch out and dodge it. Van Koon enters and saves her, leaving everyone in shock. Sylvia asks if she is all right, and she says he is the same guy from before. Van says they actually met in the dungeon, and she thanks him for saving her. Asks Van what he is doing and whether he knows her. He realizes he misread the situation. Their true enemy is the girl with a lovely face over there. Mino shouts at Van to get away from her and leave Princess Carrie, saying the Lady Dragon Queen is waiting. The queen enters as well. The Black Dragon Queen appears with her dragon. Golde wonders what it is and tells them not to tell her she is Ryuka, the Black Dragon Queen. He wonders why Ryukas is so angry, not realizing she is upset because he is holding Sylvia in his hands. Van thinks of Minosan. They are busy, and an adventurer steps in and gently set it on the ground. Mono-san thinks about how his Van Koon will deal with that, and then, Ryuka, tell me why she's angry. She says it's nothing. He tries to talk to her, but she tells him to leave her alone and not to speak to her for months. They thought they were using hand signs only childhood friends would understand. Then Van takes out the meat pie and says they should eat it together, but he begins to stammer, Ryuk. She snaps that she doesn't want any and calls the other a harpy. She is thought to be very dishonest. And Okan asks if that is really the issue right now, thinking about how Ruka can refuse the meat pie and other things. His senpai were saying this strong guy was him. Then Gold asks permission to let him express his gratitude for saving her and says he is Gold. Gold tells Van he must be very strong to have come this far, but it is even more dangerous ahead, so he should fall back. Golde says the battle will get more dangerous and asks Van to protect Sylvia while he fights them. Van is thinking about what to do. Sylvia speaks to Van. He should go to Ryuka and they'll be fine, and they said they should resume what they were doing. He apologizes to Sylvia, says he kept her waiting, and will go ahead. Golde asks if he can handle them himself. He tells him, give up because each of them is a dungeon boss or stronger and only he can beat them. Gold says he will take Ryuka and will not let anyone stand in his way. Goldie does not. Tell me what is happening. Frozen. He can't believe how overwhelmed he is. The monster says that since he can't move, they will back him up. The monster is still alive. They are about to beat Goldie, but Van stops them. Someone asks why he did that. Van says that either way he'll have to defeat them to pass. Okun agrees he has a point, and apologizes to Golda. He'll face him instead. Golda asks why he would do that. Ben says it's because Ryuka has been his friend since childhood. The monsters think Venkan just upset it. Dairyman unleashes his full power on Van, but he defends him. Full power in one go. Mino, Sankun was sure Van Khan had stopped it, and Okun didn't even see Van Khan's arms move. Van defeats Golde again, using only his fingers. Mino-san, others are stunned, wondering how this could happen. Then, he punches Golde, knocking him to the ground. Golde says it is so overwhelming that he cannot move his arms or legs and, Van, tell me how and why he is so strong. Van Koon has been coming here every 10 months for 10 years now, ever since the Lady Dragon became the ruler of this dungeon. And each time he has to deal with the monsters on all 100 floors. Tell them they raised him. Then Gold speaks. None of that matters because he earned his strength in countless battles, so he knows the hell they went through and that it is no way to live. Golden wonders why he pushed himself so hard to reach that insane strength at his age and why he needs to be so strong. That's easy to see. Ryuka. After that everyone is in shock and Van looks at Ryu's. Fortunately, for some reason, she has returned to normal. Now it's his chance and he pushes a pot of meat. Eat it calmly. Ryuka brightens and asks for another. So Van gives her one more while all the monsters find it very cute. And Golda doesn't know what's happening and looks confused. Shocked, he tells them about it. Then Van Koon enters the dungeon and runs to meet and tell Ryuka, while the monsters outside wonder if he left something there. He says he brought volume 1 of Dungeon no Osunana Jimmy. They tell her they might read this together with her, and she tells, because she is the main character, he cannot read it. Many monsters say reading this in volume format reveals the Lady Dragon Queen's cuteness in a different way. Goldie is overwhelmed by a mere boy while the Black Dragon Queen eats a pie, and the monsters who once matched him just smile, so he cannot make sense of it as he replays the game. She asks Van if the adventure will be all right, and he says he may have been too hard on him and admits he said something hurtful. Goldison will be fine and out. Ask them to leave it to her. Okun thing. She hasn't used any buffs or heals so far. She is going to heal him, so the real show is about to start. Sylvia holds Golda's head in her lap. It's the first time in a long time he's lost, but he seemed to be having a lot of fun. Gold tells her to leave it in front of the enemy, and she says it's all right, those guys aren't too dangerous. And then she adds, oh, Kun says they are the dangerous ones. He says that even if he is the legendary man, he thinks they will get away with making a little girl there and calling the guards. Sylvia says she appreciates the concern, but it is fine, because they are. She does it out of love for him. Thank you for watching. Much separates them, but Sylvia tells them they are the same age. Both are 35 years old. The monster says they're so young, and Gold replies that they get that every time. She reveals they even have a 16-year-old daughter, leaving everyone shocked that they have a child too. Sylvia explains Gold has been adventuring since he was a kid, so she began tagging along to keep an eye on him. He realizes he was really rude. Sylvia says being carried by that young man earlier brought back past memories. And right now he is having the most fun. The Columbia tells them they have been childhood friends for 30 years, and for most of that time, they're shocked to see their childhood friends now married. Suddenly, the 4 idiots found their utopia. San couldn't get enough of it, and Oken confirmed it. That's where paradise is. while Horpy-san hopes they have at least 4 more who will want to join their family. Thinks about whether they really are childhood friends who are married. The son tells Golde he wins. People asked all day why. So Minosan said they had been childhood friends for 30 years. They are married and have a child, so they are far ahead of everyone else. Someone says they can't get enough childhood friends and don't have the right to take that away from them. But Goldie can't understand what he means. It's good that Goldison won, and Goldis sounds like he could accept that. Tells Sylvia they are leaving and will come back, but she asks him to wait and then go. Near the Dragon Queen, Sylvia whispers in Ryuka's ear that she will be rooting for them and apologizes for what happened before. Ryuka asks what she means, and Sylvia says the face he had before made it obvious. Goldie-sang reacts the same way when he is jealous. Goldie tells Sylvia they are leaving, and the 4 idiots ask Goldie to tell them some stories next time they come. But Goldie says next time he comes, they are all going down. Eve's Van says it was quite a day. Ryuka then thanks Van for protecting her. He said he wanted to eat the pies before they got cold. Ryuka said they were tasty, but he asked what they were. Because she went on that treasure hunt the other day, he ended up with quite a bit of money. Some idiots thank God because the Lady Queen has calmed down, and Okok thinks Van Koon caused it and bought those pies with money taken from her treasure. Goldie and Sylvia are dangerous, but they seem to get along with them while we're here. Yuka feels she really lost her cool there and wonders if Van even cared. Van says he wonders whether they will be like that when they grow up. And Mino-san is shocked at how far Van plans to go today. Ryuka asks what he means, and he says he hopes they can always hang out with his childhood friends. Ryuka becomes furious, thinking he is the same as always, although she is not. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. 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 She's off the hook today because she remembers him saying he comes here to meet Ryuka every day. People debate whether this counts as progress, but no one knows the answer. Kun says he's curious. Meanwhile, Galdai and Sylvia pull back after reaching the 50th floor. They decide to return once they have carefully prepared for the bottom floor, and they will stay in this town for a while. Outside, the crowd was surprised that Gold reached the 50th floor and called him a legend. At this rate, this dungeon's reputation is going to skyrocket. Gold spots Van Koon up there and moves toward him. Tell him to say that he considers his debt repaid, since he just announced he will return soon. Senpeace asks Van when he met the legendary, and Van says they grew pretty friendly in the dungeon, while Senpeace notes the newbie is a bit too fearless. Sylvia tells Van they should keep getting along, and Van suggests getting something to eat and calling it a welcome party. The senpai tells Van to leave it to the other senpai, and they tell Goldie and Sylvia to get whatever they want. San orders one of the largest strawberry parfaits with 2 spoons, and Van thinks San is the kind of person who likes that. In a certain dungeon, Goldie is honing his powers and says he must get stronger and clear his mind. Meanwhile, Ryuka asks Van what kind of training he does. He asks why she's questioning him about it, and she says she was just wondering. Thinking of Mino-san, he asks her to question Venkun about how he trains, since it's a bit beyond his station. Minosan is wondering what would have happened if Venkun hadn't shown up the other day, and he feels he can't just stand by and watch them. Using Vankun's routine as a reference, he believes he can get stronger. Sun keeps telling himself he wants to know his routine, and Vankun says that simply being here is his training. However, he also practices swings on a mountain near his hometown, and tells Ryuka that Golda-san also spends time in the mountains, which is how they actually met. Van tells her Golda-san trains himself there and that the mountains are a great place to train. Ryuka says she stays indoors so she cannot go there. The area called Vancouver Trains is also known as the Byakuya Mountain Range and is one of the largest sacred mountains on the eastern continent. Someone tells Ryuka he used to meditate a lot and says it's a practice for refining the flow of power through the body and that clearing the mind is difficult. Clearing his mind, he remembers everyone will train their own way, so he must not fall behind. He tries to clear his mind. On the other side, Suki cries and says today was a failure too. When the Senpios told her they know she is a girl who works in the dungeon and tries to love everyone, they said no one would do such things in such a dangerous dungeon while she is lost in thought. If things keep going like this, it will be the same as last time. That girl still hasn't managed to. If she senses any life energy, she'll figure it's time to look for a new job. Amit finds Mino-san meditating in the middle of the mountains and Mino-sanyo wonders what he is doing. They sing together forever in love and he ends up thinking of Lady Dragon Queen and Van Koon. He calms himself, clears his mind and says just give it a try. Already buried and I can see Suki-san over there when he says he was just meditating as training. But too many thoughts came and he ended up speaking them without realizing it. Suki thinks he is trying to throw her off and still mistakenly believes Minozan likes her. Minozan thinks he needs to find his zone quickly and that Bull hates Suki. She tells him he is incredible and the entire board is very strong, yet they all still seek even greater strength. Minozan decides not to clear his mind and lets his spirit soar with delusions while watching the Lady Dragon Queen and Van share a precious moment. He finds the answer and says, "This is it." Suki says trying a little harder couldn't hurt and thanks him. And he asks whether she prefers the beach or the mountains, while that day he kept spouting delusions. Later, Minozan feels overflowing with boundless power and cannot stop thinking about loving his childhood friends. Khan tells Mino that, based on his appearance, he has reached the next level, specializes in muscle training. Parpef rely on her top speed and will. Now they can obtain the power of Fenrir. So everyone is stronger than before, and will no longer be defeated by anyone who enters the dungeon. Ryuka and Van are stuck in a room they cannot leave until they do something. Van has no idea how they ended up here. 1 hour, Ryuka asked Van whether he wanted to have some snacks. Today, Kyoji's son made some delicious pudding. He stands near the treasure where the snacks are, and Van asks her. Spotting snacks among the treasure, Ryuka says this is a bit much. He finds it a bit suspicious, but Ryuka insists it's fine, and they should open it now. Asks her to wait, but many people won't be able to see her. A force from inside pulls her into the treasure and drags Van in too, leaving them both trapped. She asks Van if he can simply break the walls, and he says he probably could, but in such tight quarters it would hurt her too. Ryuka says the same, unable to believe a trap could be here and calling it unthinkable. Meanwhile, Sun says the plan went well, and that Orkan set a trap in his territory, but they will probably figure it out, and Akun says they'll realize it afterward and be angry, so they're avoiding thinking about it for now. He says the trap is amazing and could even catch those two, and Okune calls it a treasure, but when opened it becomes a sealed space that traps anyone inside, and they cannot leave unless they meet the designated condition. They wanted a monitor to see what was going on inside, but from there they could only listen to the voices and had to run away when it ended. Harpy brings in tea for them and says this is all they need, so now they should enjoy Van Koon and Ryuka's adventure while Woe yells at them to stop and not to share the love, and Harpy yells at them. He shot it because he's one of them too, and he says, putting a young boy and a girl alone in a cramped room like that, with text on the wall saying they cannot get up without it, is not wholesome, and Harper yells at him to keep talking while threatening to do bad things to him first. Wool admits he misjudged the woman to Mino, and Mino says it's a road they'll have to cross sooner or later, and he has no complaints as long as they're happy. That's true, and this guy is too easy. Meanwhile, Ryuka accepts that it cannot be helped, and they should follow the wolves' instructions. Sharing love is all they need. Muna-san says that at last, the show can begin to prepare itself today. Ryuka asks what sharing the love actually means. Facing 3 marked words, she decides to write down ideas about the word since she has no idea what it means. She asks Van if he wants to play rock, paper, scissors for the first guess. Epison thought they'd understand the meaning of the 3 dots, and she tells everyone she wonders when they became such degenerates, but they all tell her not to group them with her, that they are still off by 1 letter or so, and on top of everything, those idiots want them to do something weird in there, and Ryoka remembers being trapped like this before. It was when they were traveling to bring him back home, and a storm forced them to hide behind a tree. They couldn't leave that tree all day, and that time was bad too. Van says he remembers how much the thunder scared her, and Ryoka says that now he can talk she seems to remember him crying as loudly as she did, and they find it cute. What they remember from that story is leaving once the storm ended and seeing the beautiful starry sky for the first time when it looked so stunning. She became the dungeon master here and never really left because the dungeon still needs her power to operate. I ask her if she's not just a shot, And she replies that is true too. She says people can still see the starry sky in many places, just like her dad did. They gave her control of the dungeon, and if they find someone to take her place, she will be free again. We'll see you in the next video someday. Once she can go outside again, they'll go look at the stars again. Ryuku, they will, of course. Minos. Idiots are standing outside the treasure listening to their conversation and find it very cute. Okun suggests building a wedding hall for them while they are still stuck in there, and Harpy cannot believe her bad plan led to this and needs another coffee with no sugar, saying it angrily. It says there are still some chances for good parts. And then the treasure opens and they come out of it. It's unclear why the chest opened even though they hadn't done anything yet. The box is being opened wide, and it has mistaken the conversation for pillow talk while everyone, including the box, remains in shock. They don't know what's happening. Mino-san says angrily that it appears they failed, and Okun thinks he must debug this now. Harpy-san says that in the end, they created a good atmosphere and everyone had fun. Also agrees with her, and says that in the end it all worked, and Ryuke, she puts them all in the treasure as punishment. They keep apologizing to her and fumble around inside because they accidentally touch each other's bodies. He repeats that their plan to make Ryuka cry was so Van could console her and they could see some things. Wool objects that making a girl cry is wrong and points out they literally work for Ryuka. Okun tells him he doesn't understand true emotions. Mino-san says it's not emotion, but his ego. The monsters are, as every day, in the middle of a meeting where each persuades the others to go along with the situation, and then Harpy enters and calls them abnormal. Silence falls and the mood turns awkward in there. Harpy-san asks them about handcuffs, magic, and love potions, and they all say they didn't ask her anything at all. Goosebumps. Since childhood, she has worked for Ryuka-san as a maid and employee. Handle the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Perfect. A very talented maid, she has a keen eye for detail. Her love for Ryuka makes her a schemer, possibly more than the other monsters. Okun says they never said that, and never did. And Minosan points out that she is explaining things as if a camera were watching. Harp. True to Gukun, she shows plenty of emotion, Okun says. Visible to all, an expert stands among them, and Gusen is their ultimate creation, which is handy for Orkun because his subordinate created her. Busan steps forward and declares that Orkun-sama is her master and eternal father, and that he is the parent of her parent. In other words, he is her grandfather. And Okun says he's still 26. At times like that, she'll say hurtful things, and Okun just hopes she won't do that to Ryuka-san, whose son tells them not to worry about it. And Okal angrily asks who she is addressing. She says she has analyzed Ryuka-san and Van's relationship perfectly. She says if they end up together, she'll be the happiest. But one thing worries her. She wonders whether those who claim to watch over her were really needed. The four idiots yell at her to stop saying hurtful things. She tells them people often complain that those four idiots keep turning up too often, and Okun yells at her to stop acting this way because they have their own share of troubles here. He tells her they are entrusted with protecting Ryuko-san and serve as her bodyguards, so they must watch over her in ways she cannot imagine. Someone asks whether Harpia-san was watching them while hiding in the washroom. It's something they have to watch over. Mino-san gets very angry with her, but Okun tells him to calm down. Wool says Van Koon will arrive soon. Before leaving, she makes snacks, tells him to go too, and asks him to do their usual work of breaking down walls and watching over them. And Okun says she is not wrong. They're playing chess, and Van tells her it's his specialty as he looks at In the middle of it, he says it's getting late and mentions re-election. Lucas says they must stop since they already played 20 games. Van says that was a lot of fun, but he's really hungry now, so he has to go home right away. Ryuga asks him whether he wants to. He has dinner with her today and agrees to eat at her place. While they sit at the table, Van asks if she is a princess, and she tells him to call her Hime Sima from now on. Meanwhile, Gusan brings in the food and tells him to keep eating, while Vaughn wonders what is wrong with her expression. After the meal, he thanks Rauka for the food. He says he had many chances to meet Gold and his wife, but Sylvia Sand's love stories about them are a bit crazy, since they get affectionate in public when they drink too much and are hard to stop. Ryuka asks Van if he is their mom because he looks out for them so often, and when Van asks if Ryuka always eats alone, She says she is used to it now and that talking while eating is nice. While the four idiots watch again, Happy Van and Ryuka are eating together and calling them like a newly wedded couple, as Ryuka urges Van to eat more meat, and he tells her to get some vegetables with Goosen watching. Goo asks Van to lick the sauce off Ryuka's face, but Ryuka becomes very angry and yells at her maid. It starts coughing and Goo says it is hurt. She says this action will make Ryuka happy. After hearing that, Ryuka asks why she would be happy after it happens, and Goose says she does it because she loves Van Koon. Meanwhile, the four idiots wonder what the maid is trying to do. Ryuka snaps at her maid, insisting she and Van are not like that at all. Van is just a childhood friend. Goose says that is such a typical line, and Ryuka trails off. Monica asks the four idiots whether this is the other plan they cooked up, and Minosan replies it's not their plan and that Monica is misunderstanding it as they panic. She calls them over and tells them to eat dinner together while she takes their class, and the four idiots come running to eat and tell her they love her. At the dinner table, Ryuka asks Gusen if she would like to join them too, and Gusen says she would love to join them, but as a maid she cannot eat and has no need for food or water. However, seeing them all smile as they eat together makes her happy, and she feels quite satisfied with that, Goose says. She looks quite happy, and her hunger seems satisfied by something like that. And Ryuka asks what she is mumbling about over there. Van asks if she should start making him dinner from today, and Ryuka says it's a bit early for that, though she's not opposed to it, and Van replies that it would be too much to ask of her, so he can't. Go into town, buy a bento, and bring it here to eat. The four idiots worry they'll be beaten by him twice a day now. In the end, they compromise and decide to eat dinner together twice a week, in a second. The host welcomes everyone to the festival and announces they will begin with the matchmaking party. The crowd claps as Harpy steps forward wearing a wig and fake glasses to change her appearance. People are trapped in this dungeon because of its structure. Gusa says this event is meant to help these monsters and can be called a single meetup. The monsters, they enjoy each other's company, and the black dragon shows up and tells them to keep it in moderation because she knows they all met someone wonderful today. Most says it was a message from their lady dragon, while Ryuka thinks she is not good at parties like this and will head back to read her book. They avoid going to the party because none of them have had good experiences with romance, so their plans keep failing. If they gain experience here, they might find a good way to bring Van and Ryuka closer. Goku tells her to hold on and says, Hassan will not survive the winter because he cannot handle it. Harpy asks what happened to him in Okan and says they will wish him luck. Harpy calls them useless and walks away, telling them to introduce themselves to the people at their table. She will learn all about romance techniques. In the areas where couples are forming here and there, he goes to check on Harpy to see if she will be all right. Harpy performs very poorly. They were near a monster but didn't know why things were going wrong. The monster introduces herself as Pico and says many of her underlings are here and that their real participation would help her. She tells him she is a harpy, and the other monster says his boss is a harpy too, but completely different from her, adding that she seems more mature than his noisy boss. He says someone is talking behind their back and tells him it is very bad. The monster agrees and apologizes while she thinks she scared him. Harpy thinks she needs an idea to start a conversation. She then thinks of something they have in common and tells him that the Van Kuhn adventure guy beat her up again this month. They say not to mention him. Every day they have to cope with that off-putting presence and never know what he's thinking. One is afraid of Van Kuhn. After that, a series of similar failures followed. Goose. She tells Wool everything, and he asks her why she is here. She tells him she is here to help set the scene and leaves. About to head back, he sees Harpy-san heading off. She settles into a relaxed position, thinks she has started watching over them, and abandons her own love to fall back into old habits. Poppy watches over a couple and notices they are already holding hands. She keeps watching. Then a monster approaches her and suggests they check out the party together. She tells him he is bothering her, and then the host expresses fears and tells them they are bothering the other participants. The monster tells the ladies the 3 things the ideal monster man needs are powerful magic, income, and some backbone, and he laughs out loud, saying the boss of the 40th floor for each sama has it all and might be the next dungeon master. Telling the women it's their chance to marry into a life of luxury, he laughs wickedly. Then, a monster girl interrupts, says it's an interesting conversation, and asks him to let her join in. Harpy Sam, the most powerful leader under Lady Dragon Sam's direct control, is 27 years old. This is a time ruled by the strong, with an irrational fear that returns every day. Yelling at them, she sends the monsters running as they apologize and says the 40th floor needs guidance. Everyone who fears them thanks Harpy Sand for protecting her. Many say she is the strongest of the leaders, and the others are overwhelmed by her. This was Harpy's 15 minutes of fame and will. Happy that she's doing well, Harpy says she has learned one thing about love and life: be yourself, and Ryuka and Van will be fine. Then she livens the place in her own way and tells everyone to refresh everything and start partying again. Thus, she drank a lot and left the hall in a mess. Since the damages are coming out of her pocket and she's still complaining, she's glad her salary is high. A new monster has appeared in the dungeon, and no one has seen anything like it before. They do not know what kind of creature it is. Ryuka asks Ryuka and Van what they should do. Then she asks him what is wrong. He tells her there are no monsters scheduled to work in the beginner area, and he messed up arranging the shifts. He says the Goblin Gobson stands there, and Minosan asks whether it is dangerous. Well, actually, Goblin said he would punish anyone who enters the dungeon and handle them himself. Oken takes the lead and says no matter how he looks at it, that is harsh, and asks if any other monsters are free, but with everyone busy, Harpy asks why he does not go, and Wool points out that they are boss-level monsters who cannot reveal their identities yet. Ryuka snaps that she does not care what he does and tells him to stop holding his little meeting over there while the 4 idiots apologize. The next day, Goblin admits he told the orcs he could handle this confidently, but now that it is the day off, he feels a bit worried because he is the leader of the lower-level monsters, and he is all alone today. He doesn't know who he is. The monster says Orcs Can sent him here, that he's a rookie monster, and that the monster will take care of him today. Before Ryuka asks Van if he has any work tomorrow, he bought a helmet from a shop. He says if he can somehow pay back the debt he keeps piling up and the outfit hides his face so they can't see him, it should be fine. According to him, if it's under his recommendation, his name is Van, but rejects it and declares his name will be Pan, a half-man, half-goat monster. While with Goblin, they decide what to throw at the adventurers first, and Pan tells him to leave it to him. Pan brings his sword and the adventurers run off. What's wrong with him? The Goblin angrily tells him those were A-class adventurers, and he must let them reach at least the 30th floor. Pan asks Goblin whether they need to finish them here, and Goblin says sea-level adventurers and below must be beaten now or they'll be hurt, that his method is over the top, and that he should make them admit defeat instead of overwhelming them to take their powers. Pan thinks Goblin is very dedicated. Goblin tells him that if he's this incompetent, it's better if he's not here, and Pan apologizes for his mistakes. Goblin asks him to watch how he works and moves. Next is a B-level duo, and he must stop them only at level 29. He assumes they're his senpeos. They enter as Goblin tries to scare them, and Van thinks they're hiding how smart they are, and simply beat the Goblin soundly. Falls on the Florence shows how he does it and tells the rookie he is up next. Pan steps in front of the Sandpice but gets beaten up by them, so the Sandpice, they're in good form today, so they should keep it that way. Goblin tells Pan he's not so bad at this, and when Pan asks if he remembers all the adventures, faces, and levels, Goblin says of course he does. They come here often, and after all it's his duty to remember at least that much, so he tells Rookie to make sure he remembers too. Van thinks this person is pretty used to messing with him, and Goblin says there are a few people he has to watch out for. The legendary man, the weird guy with dead eyes, and Van. Goblin is sure Pan knows those guys are tough. Goblin says they mess with everyone so they won't be messed with, matching their opponent's level so fights are fair, and that's the way of a low-level monster. Pan understands everything, and Goblin, with another challenger right here, they have to repair that wall and reset that trap, so there is no more pain. Returns the treasure to its original place, then safely escorts an adventurer out of the dungeon and collects the treasure. They have been growing the herbs and need to hurry because other adventurers are coming. Van thinks it is a monster. Life is much harder than an adventurer's, and the lower levels are the busiest for any monster. Even the strong Vancon is starting to understand. This is Van Conqueror of the dungeon, known for his quick mind and fast learning. He picked up the job quickly, and Goblin tells Pan the next adventure is here, while Pan says a B-level swordsman and a C-level rogue are approaching from the right, with an A/B-level magician and a C-level healer also present, and he must engage them for 5 minutes and then let them move on after working. After working for a bit, they finally get a break. Someone asks Pan if he will not take off his armor, and he says he is a little shy. He tells him he is a fast learner. In 10 years here, he has never seen such an enterprising rookie. Pan thanks him for the compliment. Van believes Goblin has been messing with the same adventurers as people like Mino-san, and considers him an amazing person. Goblin. Someone asks Pan if he wants to stay in this job permanently, and Pan says he's not sure. As Goblin enters, he says he has heard there is a never-before-seen monster on the floor. The Goblin panics, says this is the legendary man, and orders Pan to be ready. The legendary man. He beats them up and says they were pretty weak, he supposes, and Golde asks whether they have been hiding their true powers while Van thinks he was found out too quickly. Then Golde tells them to show their true power, says he called them a week ago, and Goblin asks what he means, thinking it is meant to make them feel satisfied with their victory. He says that in that case he has to get involved. Goblin thinks Pan seems a bit weaker than Minosan. Van thinks he's just going to satisfy Golde-sen and then leave. Golde lands a powerful strike that defeats Pan, who collapses to the ground. Golde says, Sylvia says they should go back and asks what is wrong. Golde says he can't find any worthy opponents today and doesn't want to get involved. Them if he isn't giving his all. Sylvia says she wanted to talk to Ryuka and Harpy, and Golde says that's not why they're here. Pan thinks they went home and wonders if they were happy about it. Goblin tells Pan he overdid it, and Pan says it's fine, so there's no need to worry. Then move on to the next episode. He thanks Pan for saving him today, but figures that if he's that strong, the first floor is a bit too low for him. He puts his sword back in and says he will never forget the things he taught him today. No matter where he stands, he will give his all so he does not lose to him. God bless you. Admiring his spirit, he tells him he can come to him any time for advice. The next, Wool apologizes to Goblin for managing the floor all by himself because Goblin gave him too much work. And Goblin, he says it's wrong to send someone like that his way because the kid is destined for big things, while Wool isn't sure what Goblin is talking about. Ruka says he sort of wants to become a monster, and she asks why and what he means. In the news, after messing with the game, Pan-kun became known as a rare monster among the guild members. With the Goblin, Vancouver is trying not to harm any monsters. Mino has noticed Van has changed a bit recently, but he still charges through everyone like he always does, but he's not really scary anymore. He can no longer break the dungeon room either, and his worries are really touching. Okay. At this rate, he'll start to think they are barely needed anymore to slow him down while they are. He says he is here while the man is talking. Van enters and says he is here while the man is talking. Van enters and says he is here while the man is talking. Van enters and says he is here while the man is talking. Van enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man enters and says he is here while the man. Monster says to speak of the devil. It's Van Kun. Parpe asks Van what's up since he rarely talks to them, and Van says he's just a bit tired and asks if they can let him through without making a mess. Mino says it's rare to see Van Kun tired. Wolf agrees he can pass and says it's better to talk than cause a mess. Wool notes. The trip here takes a long time and making a mess is pointless if they'll just lose and it only tires them out. Then Harpy suggests giving him a direct pass to the top floor, and Okun jokes they could make a special path for Van Kun to get up there. Even if it's Van, he can't allow his companions. He must stop anyone from reaching the final floor at all costs, and those are the words given to them by their former queen. Manos says it is both their destiny and a swindler. Wings is the sword to defeat Van Kun, splits him in half. The monsters are stunned and ask him to explain what he just did. They say it's fine and that it appears there's way too much gray in Ryuka's guardians, making it another condition to meet, not simply the power to create a mess and get through. Stands up and tells them their job is to protect Ryuka from the strangers. The monsters panic and ask whether she has already returned, and the lady asks if they all remember why she left them here in the first place. Somehow she gathered them all. They were young but had the power to stand on their own. Before idiots say this is why they're tired right now and ask for a break now, the woman gets angry with them, so they apologize to her. He says she will train the 4 of them this time. Mino asks whether that includes him. She replies that it should be obvious, since the 4 are meant to be her elite team. Okakun tells Mino to come along, since they will no longer be together. Meanwhile, Van comes in and finds Auntie Rin there. She is shocked, and Ryuka also comes to see her mother. Her mother asks if she is well, and she says she is fine. Her mother says it's been a while, so why didn't she have a nice chat with her? And why didn't they both talk? Inside a room for a chat, Ryuka asks if the old man came along, and her mother tells her to call him her dad. Then Auntie Rin says she left that idiot at home, and if he had come, he would have stayed here forever, which makes Ryuka think her mom called her dad an idiot. And her mother says that even though he retired, things are still busy. And right now, he is in a meeting with the princess of the other dungeon. So she found it boring and decided to visit to lift her spirits. Auntie Rin asks Ryuka how she is doing, and Ryuka says she is managing, since regaining power is hard, but everyone is doing their best. And her mother asks her if that applies. Not seeing her feels a bit lonely, but it's great getting to hang out with the 4 idiots here, Gusun and the other monsters. Also drops by to hang out every day. She confirms it is Vonkon and says he has been coming to dinner every night lately, and the 4 idiots eat with them too. Someone asks how long it's been since he started living in the next town, and Ryuka replies it's been about a month or so. Aside from that, they ask if Ryuka is safe and whether he did anything to her, and Ryuka replies that he did not. 2 of them are just childhood friends and nothing more. The relationship grows over time, and the same is true between monsters and humans, especially her mother. As her ruler of all monsters, the Demon King was defeated by a hero long ago. A hero will come to confront the Demon King someday, arriving with a new generation when a new Demon King appears as humans and monsters begin creating endless chaos. So once again, she and Van must take action. Ryuka couldn't reply, so Auntie Rino did. She went to meet Van and he asked her, "What does this mean?" She tells him that today, instead of the generals, she will be his opponent, and suggests he may continue meeting her daughter, so he must prepare to face the woman who fought the Demon King herself, while Van says he will tell her now that he will not hold back, and Antirin says she has not yet recognized him as worthy to be friends with her daughter, so he must confront her. She was 9 when Van began visiting her once a month, and once he came after a month, Ryoka said he looked beaten, and he told her that despite that he could now land hits on the generals. He says he'll definitely beat them someday. Van comes by once a month and would like to visit more often, but he lives too far away, so there's nothing to be done. Have fun playing Demon King versus Hero, and climate competitions. Work keeps her from seeing her parents, and her bodyguards are intimidating, so Van's visits make her really happy. She was telling him a story, but trailed off. Noticing he had fallen asleep, she wished him good night and thanked him for being there for her. Despite everything, they stayed together. When he wakes up, he tells her she's drooling, and she tells him not to stare. And Van says he's used to it because she did the same when she napped as a kid. So she asks him to forget it while the monster bodyguards watch them. Auntie Rint leads Van to a place where they can make a mess. Van asks where they are and what the place is, and she says she restructured the construction area and expanded it to the size of a small country, so it should not be a problem. Still wondering if they are inside the dungeon, Van prepares himself and finds the air very cool, like a dragon. Auntie Rin strikes him across the face with her tail and asks, feeling a bit nervous because he's in a dungeon and he's an adventurer, he has hold on to get through the gate, and if he pushes his luck too far, he will become food. Rather than confront her, he draws his sword and cuts off her tail. As a result, stunned, Rin tries to beat him up, but Van dodges, asks him whether he is experimenting with the techniques mentioned. She says to add that they are us. He makes his move again. Rin says he's been holding back until now because people often underestimate. She plans to beat him up again, but he provokes her, so she says if he expects to lose with that attitude, he should come at her if he really wants to end her, otherwise Ryuko will. Van says she will not do it at all, and he says he will not end her because he and Ryuka promised each other that. When asked what she'll do in this case, Ryuko says nothing much, and doesn't think she'll change anything. Even if she were confrontational, she would not break the rule that no one is left in this dungeon, and she is sure Van would do the same. The other person asks how one can be sure, since although she is his childhood friend, she has different views. She had never told her mother this before and wondered why. While traveling with Van, she was captured by bandits. Van rescued her immediately, but he was so furious he forgot about her and she had to stop him from killing them all. Van was also deeply shocked. I was scared because Van was also near the end and he was about to take another one to the end. They then promised not to involve anyone in vandalism. They don't want to make Ryuka cry again. Ven worries that if he ends up on tape, he won't be able to face Ryuka, since she is his child. Ryuka told her mother that from now on, whatever happens, she does not want to live without Ven. Then, mother asks her whether she thinks their childhood friendship will change or ever end. Ryuka replies that of course she does not, and explains why. A childhood friend is always a childhood friend. Broad could say it was the first time in her life. He says it was Broad's second. It was the only time. At their meeting, Ryuka tells Gu to leave, and Ryuka's mother says she will acknowledge Ryuka's resolve. Teasing Van, Auntie Rin asks if he will give up meeting Ryuka, and he thinks he needs an opening. But a tail and a neck emerging from the shadows are troublesome. So if he does not get past that defense, he will be no good. And Van tells Auntie he will use his powers now, so she must protect herself. And she says, I can't believe he spoke to her that way, and uses a self-taught sword style, which makes the training grueling. And he manages to defeat Auntie Rin and weezers her hand as she cries out in pain. Her body won't move, and everything inside has stopped. She thinks this guy has reached the point where he can control not only his own powers, but others as well. Unable to control the pain, she asks Van to release his grip and accepts her defeat. Van finds the style too loose because the moment he swings down the sword, it breaks. So the technique is no good, while Auntie keeps asking him to release his grip as she accepts defeat, and Van then uses his force to attack the enemy. He asks her if she suddenly took a test, and she says she wanted to. She asked him to confirm he was ready to face future problems, and she had not expected him to be this capable. She admits he's gotten stronger and understands why Ryuka fell for him. Running toward her mother, she still couldn't believe she had made a clone. She had come alone to mess with Van, and her mother had always disliked Van. Ryuka's dad feels differently because he loves him too. His mother asks Van to take care of her daughter, and he agrees to do it. Mother doesn't like being called Auntie, so she tells him to call her Majesty. Yuka and Vaughn are talking about the introductions, and her mother finds them cute. After a while, her mother says she's leaving, so Ryuka asks if she's already going, and adds that she could have stayed a little longer. Her mother apologizes to her for coming while her husband was in a meeting, and Ryuka asks her to send regards to her dad too. The four idiots explain what happened to them. They tell her that their Majesty took them to another room to be lectured. Her mother told them to prepare to pay Ryuka her respects and warned she would end them if they refused. She tells Van that because she messed with him, she'll give him a brief warning. Beware the great hero. Van is unsure what the woman means and thinks the seniors are talking about something similar. Her mother says she has seen him before and that he is on another level. He tells them he'll come here eventually. She wonders. They will get along, and Ryuka is excited to hear it. Her mother warns them to be careful, and Ryuka shouts, "Rest assured, whoever comes will be safe and will survive." As they leave, Ryuka's mother tells Ryuka to eat well and asks them both to get along. Van says he's glad he hasn't seen Antirin in a while. Ryuka says he's awesome for being able to beat her mother. Van notes that Ryuka's mother is strong. Minosen says he is treated like a son, and that it was a test of skill as a son-in-law. Harpy, shocked, wonders if that is what Majesty meant by getting along with each other. Then Ryuka's mother hugs her, tells her to use proper protection, and Ryuka says she will. A Christmas event is happening in the dungeon Noa Sanajimi. Van enters the event and Ryuka tells her they are all set. He says she really goes all out every year and all the monsters are even cosplaying. Ryuka says going all out on seasonal events is her motto, and then says they should start the party. Have them sit together to open the Christmas gifts, and seeing teddy bears and bags makes them really happy. She sleeps with the teddy she received as a gift, and Vaughn returns home, while Harpy wonders why it ended so wholesomely on this romantic night and they don't know what. They have 6 hours to fill. Minasan suggests playing that game again, but Okun says they're adults, so it would look bad for them to play it. For the first time, an announcement rings out in the dungeon. 2 different communities are holding a match. 8 monsters all in love with the Dragon Queen. The match will decide which dungeon's crew is fit to serve Lady Dragon. That introduces the warriors who will decide their fate. Goosehand calls the monster with a tough physique the mutant Cobalt, Vulcan. With incredible speed and a high-energy voice, she calls the girl and is the older sister known as Harpy-san on. On stage, the second match will be between the man who specializes in traps, the chief of the trap squad, the orc family's elite brains known as Okun, and last, their dependable captain and strongest minotaur, Mino-san, speaks. These four are the team's permanent idiots. Then, they call the one with a producer's face Guri-gura. The other specializes in making a mess. A beast, who was uninterested at first, now moves toward the Dragon Queen. The host says, "Get ready for some action," and announces the next contestant as a fairly simple girl. One has a hand known as Katsi Katsan. Then the host names Uni-san, the model unicorn, whose path in life I would love to know. She says, "These are the 4 challenges from the other dungeon." And Akun thinks those introductions were odd. Idiots think Gusan is really into this, and they don't know why it turned into a festival or whether there will be more matches like this. On the other side, the monster thinks these guys could use being more laid back, and the unicorn says that must be nice. Minasan stands by their words and says people should not underestimate them. Today we will show them they are only fanboys who could never protect Lady Queen, unlike Team Forever idiots. Goose introduces the judge, their own Lady Dragon Queen. People see her as a judge and can hardly believe it's really her when she's here with us. Rukus wonders why this is happening just as he is about to become a real hit. Keep in mind she is the one who is worried here and pushes Van back in. When he tries to look out, each match will include 3 events, and the first team to win 2 matches will be the victor. Mino-san is confident their strength is superior in every way and believes that if they move fast, they can win. They must forget about the best of 3 and rush in to take them down. Gusan announces it is time for the first match and explains that each member will draw a portrait of the Lady Dragon Queen who will judge, and the team with the most appealing work will win. Mino-san wonders whether this is a variety show and what will happen to their combat skills and powers. She says messing around would end too quickly, so this is fairer. More importantly, she thought it would make things more interesting. Then the girl from a member of the other team tells Mino-san that if he's scared he'll lose Grandpa. Mino tells her to watch it and says he's not her grandpa because he's only 28 years old. These idiots claim they will not back down from any challenge and that they will win this for the Lady Dragon Queen. Gu announces they have 1 hour and the first match begins. They're making the portrait at staggering speed and clearly aren't strangers to art. The drawings appear in the blink of an eye, but no one knows how. Reuse. You could check their work and say they did a good job. Reviews everyone's work. Heavenly tells the team to always watch as they put their love for the Lady Queen into their work. And she is grateful they polished their skills and created the greatest fantasies. And he shows his portrait and says he could draw it with his eyes closed, like the Lady Queen. The rulers alone have all produced spectacular pieces, and their confidence shows on their faces, for the Lady Dragon Queen to evaluate. And she gives them they light up when they receive a like from the one and only Lady Dragon Queen. And today is the best day of their lives. Goon says the heavenly rulers are crying tears of joy and shares the tea. Team Forever Idiots is suddenly under pressure. They say they must draw something that earns a higher score. Finally, they reveal their portraits, but nobody likes them. The Forever Idiots team says they're just warriors and can only draw blueprints. Then the Lady Dragon Queen evaluates while the heavenly team remains. They are happy and think this will be their end. It's all up to him and he must serve the Lady Dragon Queen. Someone asks the queen which one she likes, and she says Katsy's portrait is cute, then asks Van which he likes, and Van says the unicorn drawing is amazing, which makes the monster happy to be included. But when he keeps staring at Ryuha, she tells him to stop because it embarrasses her, and he whispers that they are making her look beautiful, both speaking quietly so no one finds out. I'm not sure what he could be drawing. Mino-san keeps the drawing ends. An announcement says time is up, and he says just double them for him. Wolin Okun asks which one he is talking about. He shows the drawing he made. Okun praises it as marvelous and warns him he cannot draw Van like this because they will find out. Mino-san urges him to show his passion so everyone will understand as the announcement is made. while the team's eternal rulers argue and unicorn sense harms his team. Meanwhile, it comes out of Harpy's son's nose. It ruins the drawing, which affects both of them. Anyone who loses the first match, disqualified after his run, he says the first match going to the heavenly rulers is a major development. Right now, the Lady Dragon Queen's position is locked in a match with Team Heavenly Rulers. The first round ended in an overwhelming defeat when Harpy San injured herself and was eliminated. Team Heavenly calls Team Forever Idiots losers and claims their feelings for the Lady Dragon Queen are stronger. One more loss by Team Forever Idiots would give Team Heavenly the final victory. Mino-san says they cannot afford to lose the next match, which is about to start. Goosehand says next up is something practical, a power collection showdown. Both teams will face adventurers and try to gather power from them, while the Lady Dragon Queen will judge their performance. The power, humans are a vital resource for them, supporting Ether Air and their workshops. Ether Air is a magical tool that manages air, indoor lighting, temperature, oxygen levels, pressure, and everything else in the dungeon. People are gathered by inviting them inside, then using magic to mess with them, and that is absorbed through the walls and floors. This time, the goal is to cause the adventurers as little harm as possible, and that will be a challenge for both teams. The only rulers say Mino-san's team has this one in the bag, but he would not be so sure they are strong enough to make the adventurers run away. You're going to have the home field advantage. The unicorn he keeps calling them idiots and says he has a proposal for them. Replace Harpy Sand and add that sucky one to their team. Busan asks what Uni is. Uni-san offered a member to the Forever Idiots team. A backup player and Unicorn say it seems people think she is so great, so they should give her a short presentation. Sure, she'll do great by their dungeon standard, but Mina-san team members are pissed after hearing it. Then he says that perhaps she actually managed to get them to promote her beyond her station with her love-sharing technique. He thinks they cannot back down now, and he looks forward to seeing them hurt and trying to work with that for nothing. Maniocean asks, bring it on, while Saki looks at the ring but wonders if they stand no chance against Unyo-san and the others. Manil comforts her and says it is all right because everyone has seen her hard work and she will not lose to someone like him. This is a perfect chance to show them they are wrong. Oku Kana, backing her up, should let them win this together. Teaser. No matter which idiots try to motivate her, if she does it like she always does, she will win. Someone watches them and worries about their injuries while Saki-kun agrees to enter the ring and win the match. Oko-kun tells her to leave the behind-the-scenes work to him, and Shiyun Mino-san will take the lead in collecting the power and wool and count on them for backstage support. Then an announcement calls Team Forever to the middle levels, and they are all ready to go. Wool tells Harpy San to watch over them from the grave, but Oken tells him not to just end her like that. Then there is a scream. The screen is developed by the Trap Department Assembly and is nearly the size of a hall. Their Lady Queen used it to look into the van. He tries to come out, but Ruka hides him again, tells you not to worry while Unison finds it cute. Ruka tells everyone to look because it seems some adventures showed up. Van's Senpai says it feels unusually quiet today and isn't sure where the monsters are, so they decide to be cautious because it feels stranger than before. They overhear monsters talking to each other and assume the monsters are just messing around. Tenpai says Saki has been stuck working on the first floor lately, and the other asks if that is the Minotaur and if it is a very strong boss. Saki falls at Mino-san's feet and apologizes to him. Mino says she is all he has left and asks her not to toss him away. Senpai thinks they're breaking up because of how they sound and sees it as a chance to keep moving. Meanwhile, Gusan is confused about whether Mino and Saki are breaking up because she can't figure it out. And then Harpisan stands up. She says she is here to explain that this spot is usually Orkan's. While everyone is confused, she came back to life, and she admits it was too late for the match. But a general heals quickly, noting Orkan specializes in explaining things and likes trapping adventurers, then describing their slow end. So there is no need to worry because his explanations are good. Ryuka says she does not want to hear these odd rundowns of her lackeys. Then Harpy says this is likely a case where a woman angers her boyfriend and a breakup talk starts. Uni-san isn't. He asks why they did this and why it makes him look like Saki's ex. Lucky this is her new man who got involved with a woman like her. And Ryuka says it is. Like wool turned into incomprehensible horror. Calling her an idiot. He says she's too selfish and a loser, that he's very annoyed now. and that the only thing she has going for her is a nice face. They believe this is retaliation against them, and Will tells Suki that if even her new boyfriend is tired of her, she's nothing now. Will tells him not to talk to her like that, and he beats him up. She says it was a mistake not to listen to him, and asks Mino if he had been angry with her until now, and he says he was. He's mad at himself for being the kind of man who would make her cry, while Ryuka says his earlier annoyance was nothing. Mino-san is a good guy at heart, and Harpy suggests his character might be more dynamic. She tells Mino he is too kind, and that she thinks he is amazing, and because he is so different from her last boyfriend, she worries unnecessarily. They begin moving closer together as Ryuka wonders what it is. Bernie-san asks what they get out of this little act, and Harpy explains it to you. Have them simply wait and watch. For some reason, the adventurer noticed it, and his energy began to overflow. Uni-san stood in shock, and Harpy explained that a person's energy can overflow from emotions, just as power can come from anger and determination. If someone sees something cute or heart-fluttering, their power can start to flow. They announced that the breakup act stopped the adventurer, and his love caused his power to overflow. Sin-Pais could not move forward because he was too weak against the cute girl and the other one. This isn't very emotional. However they look at it, it's an act. The X appearing out of nowhere like this is too good to be a coincidence, and the way they went from breaking up to sorting things out was far too quick. Also, look at their faces. They seem very embarrassed. Senpai now realizes they really pulled him in with that, and the announcer says it was a close miss, and adventurers have figured it out. Mino says the scenario was a bit too much, and Goosehan wonders if this was a failure after all. Eunice. Suki gets very happy and says, "Look at that! It was just too much for them to handle, and they showed them another failure. Her mistakes caused it all." Minosan comforts her, saying it was not her fault, and she does not need to worry. She did her best, and he is proud of how she fought alongside him. He thanks her for helping him out, and Suki thinks he is worth it. He's still looking out for her, and she really is a failure. She is wondering if she might like him. Rocky-san realizes that it was all real as Senpai falls to the ground and says, "That is the face of a woman in love." Our power begins flowing in massive amounts, and the team lasts forever. They successfully make it through the power recovery stage. The host asks the Lady Dragon Queen how they did, and she says they did amazingly. Suki's power is stronger than usual today, and they did a good job. Harpy says she kept them from meeting so they could pull off this drama. Suki Sans' face looks drawn as well. Suki Sans asks Oken if he was 3 steps ahead, and he laughs, saying this is power at work. It seems they have been able to reveal it. Believe Suki defeated those adventurers and said, "What did that look on her face mean?" Tells him Suki is a good girl and so on. He claims he can approve of it as a unicorn. That cannot be. It is even rarer than some artifacts. Unisan says his head and consciousness are hurting because he didn't notice, even though he's a unicorn. Mukun says he's just taking damage for no reason, and Will thinks that guy feels the same way as Minosan. They announce the next team, and you already knew. He tells his companions they must retrieve the power and come out on top, and that he is relying on Porkson. Pork says emotions don't matter. They just have to beat them up. The cat girl says if the opponent is a guy, she'll make sure to hurt him properly. The team is ready. They step onto the floor while everyone watches to see who would win this round. And then, Van steps out and tells everyone that even people in town know about the dungeon's plan here. Anyone overdoing it isn't really part of their guild. They were the ones who hurt the goblin on the first floor and went overboard, while the heavenly team cannot make out what he is saying because they cannot hear him from there. The heavenly, revealing, 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 revealing. Don't worry, he will make sure not to kill him. Instead, he will turn them into cattle to use for farming. The cat girl says this guy looks like he has no power and laughs, loud. The monster sizes him up as a weakling at a glance, and they say his real mistake was coming alone. The monster gets angry with Van and warns him to be ready, saying he will capture him and take all his men. Ryuka makes fun of Van, thinks the monster is an idiot, but feels good. An announcement declared the team Forever Idiots the winners of the second round. But Mino-san doesn't feel it was their win. Someone urges the heavenly rulers to keep their chins up, and the host asks everyone to applaud them while they are terrified. He tells them they can relax, and Van leaves right after beating them all up, and asks who that adventurer is, because he is on a different level. Tells Muno-san he admires his strong spirit, but Mino tells him he will not survive this round because he is their opponent now. Unisend angrily says he will be the one who does not survive. Minosan thinks this will finally decide who will earn the title of the little lady's subordinates, and Gusun announces it all comes down to one match and the final showdown. This match is called the Lady Dragon Queen Quiz. That covers everything about the Lady Dragon Queen, and the contestants are Wulkan and Gurasa. Each correct answer is, the dancer will give them a chance to beat the opposing team, and whichever team falls first determines the victor. All of them are motivated. Will-kun tells the Lady Dragon Queen he will not let her down while the other idiots urge him on. What present did the Lady Dragon Queen receive from her father for her 6th birthday? Guru Hassan says he knows the correct answer, and the Lady Queen lets him speak, saying she got a teddy and had it rewrapped. Since Yuka agrees, the first point goes to the heavenly rulers. Another question asks what food the queen refused at 10, and what trouble she faced while investigating a trap. Guru-san says she got stuck in a slimy pit and earns another point. He gets 3 points in a row and says even Mino-san will feel it. Meanwhile, the team, always acting like idiots, are shocked that Guru-san answers so fast and do not know why. Gurus. The original book about the Lady Dragon Queen is a fan book. This book contains the Lady Dragon's personal details and was written by fans. The Heavenly Kings have memorized it, and Ryuka wonders who wrote it. Guru-san says the author is Harpa-san, while Mino-san, shocked, he cannot believe him. Harpa-san says she would never write anything like that. She realizes she may have written it. The team's idiots get very angry with her and say she really messed everything up this time. Nu-san says she checked the book when it was published and it's all good. Ryuka is angry and tells them they need her permission for that. Then Guru-san says, thanks to Harpy-san, he gained the Lady Dragon Queen's favor and says a victory is still a victory. Dragon's Queens, the new subordinates, are the Heavenly Kings. Team Forever. At the end of the road, about to give up. They still have a shot at coming back. Asks the next question. What was the first gift the Lady Dragon Queen gave to a certain male friend? Asks what kind of question that is, while Wool tells them it was a handmade picture book that had been reused. That answer is correct. Van says it's displayed at his house like fine china. Is Ryukas quite embarrassed at the moment? A full force strike against the unison may turn the tide of victory. Guru Siddhartha. He says he doesn't have that information. A male friend and Wool say the queen herself confirmed it, so it's true. Another question asks how many times a boy stayed overnight in the queen's room, and Will answers 15. Goosehan then asks what game the queen plays most with a boy, and Will says one-on-one basketball. Team Forever Idiots come back with full energy, and the heavenly. They're almost done, but the queen isn't. Also good. Goose. One then presents the last question. The Lady Dragon Queen has a boy she likes, but Oken says she cannot just ask for him. Wolf says she really likes a boy, answers it immediately and asks Ryuka if this is correct. And the Lady Dragon. The queen says they got it wrong. The Lady Dragon Queen looks confused and says it's not love, but she can't say she hates him either, calling them just childhood friends and admitting she doesn't know what the future holds. So she declares the question invalid as everyone murmurs. She clearly has a boy she likes. Team Heavenly's hopes and dreams are gone. Goro-san says he thought idols weren't allowed to date. Team Forever's opponents are down, so it's Mino-chan's chance now. But Mino says there's no need to hit them again. After. This leaves Unison in shock, and Unison thinks it should have been him, not the other one, and Mino-san asks what is wrong with him. Unison grows angry and strikes he's not giving up yet. Furious, he says he will not give up because he cannot believe the Lady Dragon Queen is dating someone. Announces that you knew your son had started swinging and that this breaks the rule. Guru. Someone tries to stop Uni's son, but Uni's son tells him to back off because he won't accept defeat. Gu's son announces the heavenly kings are automatically disqualified, and the victory goes to the forever idiots. Mino-san told Uni-san earlier that the quiz will end only when one of them is defeated, so they will not stop now. That was their chance to win, but she is unsure what Mina-san is doing. Van says this man means nothing to Mino-san and must have some other reason for it. Tells Uni-san he can go if he wants. Both of them start a scene and neither backs down. Uni-san asks Mino what is wrong with them after their idol admitted she has a guy friend and wonders how they can smile like that. Mino says it is a betrayal to her fans and they should be screaming, crying, and throwing up. Says their selfish idea of standing is wrong. Queen has always been the cutest person alive. Yoni-san says Queen is not an idol. Mino asks him to explain the official fan book and says it's all the Harpies' fault, blaming the Queen. They want the world to worship them and plan to eliminate any male presence. Those people will never see that expression on her face again. Mino-san said it was very cute, and what loving an idol mean to him. Uni-san says he can't stand the idea of her having a boyfriend and wants her to stay single for at least 10 more years. Mino says that's a really bad thing to say. She asks him if he is so disappointed to learn she has a boyfriend, and if that is all Queen means to him. Mono asks why he even tolerates the Lady Dragon. A monster appears and asks Team Heavenly what they think they are doing. He asks them to give him more energy because he lacks it and wants to know what else to do. What he needs is a hero's pure energy, so he tells them to hurry up and bring them a hero. What they're useful for. Unity and his team are mentally and physically exhausted. They keep a never-ending policy for humans and monsters because the Black Dragon's daughter runs it and profits from it. Ensure it is clearly a king. This is what their idol is. Asks me not to take away their only bit of happiness. He says he doesn't care at all and tells him to drop his messy little story. Mino understands now. They are seeking salvation from the Lady Dragon Queen. Misan bows, says it's no wonder they don't see eye to eye in Mino. These dungeon monsters are here to protect the Queen. Those were their orders from the start, and beyond duty, her strength, loveliness, and kind heart make them guard her all the more. All they want is for the Lady Dragon Queen to live a healthy, happy life, and that is enough for them. San tells Unisan he won't let anyone near her, but says it's fine if she likes someone or even gets married. Harpy admits he saw that coming in the first half and says San sounds like an overprotective dad ranting about his daughter. Many fans think their idol already has the team she needs, and someone like him is unworthy of standing before the Queen. Minu. Someone asks him if he's sure, since he made some impressive fan art. He admits he loves his art, and I also believe there were other fans who supported the Queen this much. His son apologizes to me for everything, and says that being able to stand by someone so beloved is a blessing, and he has met a great group of friends because of it. Heavenly also agrees with Uni-san, who says that during all their time standing, his comrades were a big part of his happiness. Mino says they should talk again sometime and thanks them. To Uni, his fellow Dragon Queen, Stan. Both team members apologize to each other, make up, and accept whatever punishment is announced. But because they acted by their own rules, they want to keep the other dark demons out of it. Ryuka says she has a lot to say, but for now thanks them for painting her wonderful pictures. And as she is about to speak about the dark demons, Uni-san excuses her and says, when she stands that close to him, his heart will fail. He asks her to keep about 5 meters between them, and Mino says they could never have worked for her anyway. The final match between the two dungeons has ended, and Oken says, they created a huge mess for no reason. Origins became the dungeon's new division, and level 45 Ogir-kun was chosen as the new boss. Inferno-kun had been defeated by Goldsan, and his skill was average. He is currently efforts to improve the dungeon's welfare program, and the Oken power harvesting team seem to be helping. Highly motivated, the Heavenly Kings give their all whenever the Queen cheers them up. Minam. He says it's time to choose a new floor boss, and that Gobson wants to recommend someone. Harpy says they first need a plan for the great hero, who is supposedly on Van's level, and Ryuka angrily tells them not to hold the meeting there. She tells the monsters that her happiness is everyone else's, but the reverse is true as well, even more so for them. The sisters began to cry, promised to stay with her and protect her to the end, asked permission to stand with her, and she accepted, telling them not to cry anymore. Mino of Dungeon is happy because they gathered a great deal of power from adventurers this month, And Okun says that by taking control of the ogre in their last match, Dungeon's influence has grown considerably, which they all owe to their lady queen. Tells them to stop fooling around, get back to work, and calls them a harpy. It's endless, and once the third floor reports arrive, Wool says the fewer adventures there are, the more paperwork they have to deal with instead of real work. Orkan wants to make a magical device to help them with their work, and he asks her to be more specific. She says they can store information, perform calculations, create documents, and everything they write appears on the crystal. Okan says making that seems pretty much impossible. Ryuka tells them to end the chat. One of them asks if there is a problem, and she asks, they need an adventurer's evaluation of the dungeon. Harpy suggests putting a suggestion box on each floor, but Ryuka objects. If Van comes, she'll ask him, and Mino asks whether that will actually help. They are talking about Van as he comes in. As the monster leaves the room, Ryuka watches the group file by in a queue and says, this looks more like an assembly line than usual. Waiting for Van, she watches him finally come in and ask what's up with the monsters today. He asks if he came at a bad time, and she says he is fine and there is no need to worry. They say they recently removed their ogre organs, so they are swamped with paperwork for that, and for registering the monsters. That has added to their usual workload, and Van says it is a good thing he brought the matri. He takes out meat pies and massages Ryuka's shoulders, too. Ask him to massage her head, face, and neck. She let out a lot of stress. Then he says, Ryuka said he will also help her with some things. They won't let an adventurer do dungeon work, but he insists. She accepts and says she is compiling data and would like an adventurer to evaluate their dungeon. He says there's no problem with it and will ask his guild for some adventures. On the way to the guild, Ryuka thinks she just wants to hear his opinion because he is an adventurer. Goes out there and asks the adventurers to fill out the forms. He returns to the dungeon and says he collected everyone's response. Ryuka looks it over. The adventure. One adventure warns them that the fourth floor staircase is very steep and should be fixed. Another adventure says the dungeon is difficult but worth it. They keep reading the responses and find a wide range of reactions from the adventures. Someone tells Van that they all gave him serious answers, and Van says there are some other requests too, and Senpai asks to meet a slime that can dissolve women's clothes, and Van tells him that's why he doesn't get any girls. Another senpai says his equipment was taken last week and he wants it back, and Ryuka asks to be told what it looks like so she can search for it. Then they bring out Goldie Sands' request. Asking for a strong opponent, he says it will be very helpful. He wants he can go mess with Van Koon and will face Van there if he shows up. Van says this guy has a different kind of mental strength than the four idiots. Another request came in about the 32 floors. They were trapped in a room by a magician, and Goldo told them not to worry, and that he would protect them. Van watches Ryuka and says this is real work compared to what they're used to. He asks if the list is correct, and Ryuka says it's fine and asks him to do another. A monster watches them and thinks they look like childhood friends who are completely comfortable with each other. It's nothing new, but it feels better, and everything seems to be coming together. Ryuka notices the monster watching and tells it to leave them alone. After working for a while, Ruka and Van are finally done. Ruka calls Van a lifesaver and asks they should decide what to do next. Van says they're tired from working, so they should rest. Ryuka rests her head on his chest and he asks what is wrong. He held her up in his hands. He takes her to the bed, lays her down, and leaves for his home. The next morning. Waking up, Ryuka says she overslept. Despite getting a lot of help, she still slept the same. Stepping outside, she sees the four idiots frozen in shock since yesterday and brings meet the pies for Ryuka and Seisha. She really enjoys them while eating, marvels at how much meat the town packs into its pie, and asks for another while Goosen comes in and says she brought cookies for them. Tonight's dinner is stewed and gratin. Van appreciates Goose Hand's cooking, calls it delicious, and says he will end up eating far too much. Ryuka says it's fine since they are growing kids after all. Yuka gained a bit of weight, and Harpy says that's actually good because thick thighs are in nowadays. Guasan isn't so sure because if she stays like this, it will spell trouble not just for the queen, but for the childhood friend too. Ryokai, the Link asks whether they have any dieting tips, and Harpy replies, although she usually eats a lot, she doesn't seem to gain weight. The lesson says forgive her, but her weight hasn't changed since she was created. And the harpy tells her she is made of stone. She tells Ryaka she can definitely go on the diet and lose weight. When people talk about weight loss, exercise is the key. Ryaka says she doesn't hate sports, but finds them a hassle. Barbie tells her she knows something fun. Then she suggests watching X-Men one night. Van and Gusan say she heard that chicken is great for dieting. The main meat is especially good because it's low in calories and fat and a good source of protein. Hokwon walks in, says he overheard their conversation and asks Ryuka to let him handle it. But Ryuka tells him to stop listening to them, and then she asks if he can make a magical device to help her lose weight easily. He says there are no shortcuts to dieting, that frequent exercise and strict diet management are the keys, but if she is not willing to change her lifestyle, she must learn balanced nutrition for both her diet and work, or she will not lose weight. Kun knows a lot about it because his hometown is known for training soldiers in caves, where recruits receive strength training and nutrition lessons. That he is not slim himself and not a harpy. People say those who can't do, teach, but Okun angrily tells her to shut it because he's the expert here. Okun tells Ryuka it will not be easy, but he expected this, so he turns one of the dungeon's traps into it. This is the dungeon's diet course, featuring climbing sections, spinning obstacles, a wrapped wall, and many other traps. Working through it with determination gives the best results. Okun tells Ryuka that if she can complete the whole course, she will definitely lose weight, and Ryuka is motivated and decides to do it. Confident the extra pounds will come off, Ryuka runs inside and finishes all the exercises. Okun says the whole point is to burn calories. She says this will be easy and is motivated to work harder. Meanwhile, on the 45th floor, the Black Dragon Queen is breathing calories this month. They say she emerged from the depths of the dungeon. They thought they could go further now that the inferno was gone, but maybe the dungeon's balance is collapsing. No one knows what is happening and people run away when it gets hot, and Ryuka says she can detox on the hot 45th floor, likes burning calories that way, and plans to melt off extra fat. Dan's there too and says this is pretty pointless and I wonder why he is here. He says he heard she was here, so he came over and thinks he knows what's going on. He keeps saying that. This will not help her lose weight. She is told that adventurers use up a lot of power when they mess with strong monsters, and when their energy runs out, they burn calories. But with infinite power, she could breathe flame for an eternity, and it would do nothing. Ryu Coffee. Van tells her that the barista wasted nearly an hour, and that the person she was trying to hide it from saw right through her. She needs a lighter exercise to use her energy, and running is a good choice. Ryuka says it has to be something painful, and he says he'll go get his exercise clothes too. Ryuka asks whether he'll run with her as well. He offers to be her running buddy and says it's easier to keep going with support. Later, to keep running now that she is finally breaking a sweat and he shouldn't have been bringing snacks every day. Vance says the snacks made her so happy, so he felt he had to bring them. Everyone will keep dieting together because the monster bodyguards are watching them. X is a member of the adventuring party Dogfang. Less powerful than his companions, he is useful in a support role and as a rear guard. He says that if they capture the dungeon together, he could legitimately become an A-class adventurer one day. He removed him from the team because, in his view, he is not worthy. Dogfang's B-class party reached a high of 422. Its members are Zairu-san, Twist-san, and Hope-san. They are kicking out Zanvan right now. Goblin has developed a teacher-student relationship with Pan ever since Pan helped when the staff was short. Van says being kicked out of a party is a big deal, and he has seen it often in Ruka's games and books. He expects Ruka will be excited when she hears about it. Pan asks Goblin if this happens often, and Goblin says parties rarely swap members, but this is the first time he has seen one leave at such a moment. Okoni then appears and tells Pankun to listen carefully and warns that if the group splits up or takes a bad turn, they will step in. On the other side, someone asks Zirasan why he wants him to go, and Ziris replies that he has already told him several times. The skill gap between them is too large, and he is a burden because of it. Extra small. It's true he's weaker than the others, so he began helping with chores and cooking. But Ziris says they don't need that anymore, and Pan watches, calling it a sad situation. After forcing begs Ziru to let him in, he will do his best to get stronger. But Ziru demands proof immediately. They tell him to get past the 30th floor and seize the dark crystal, and they will change their mind about him if he brings it back on his own. That's not possible. This is an A-class adventurer's floor, and he is essentially telling him to cease to exist. X think. He brings it up and says he sees how it is and that he's going to. We will make them regret kicking him out. Hide when they see X approaching. They say they couldn't even make a mess and ask whether the monsters further down are okay. From now on, X will prove his greatness, succeeding on his own and leaving the rest of his party behind. Or so Pan-kun says. And when Goblin asks where he heard such a story, Pan-kun pulls it out. At a bookie bar with a friend, they hear many stories of banishment. Goblin says his friend has a strange taste in stories. The story, it continues and all the team members apologize to X and Xerus. X sells himself short. He has the ability to reach A-class adventures like Goldzon, but he doesn't realize his team is holding him back. They were barely C-class, and with his support, they became B-class. Iru kept telling X about it, but X didn't understand and hoped that by using him, X could recognize his own strength, forget the likes of them, and become an A-class adventurer, and calls it a classic plot twist. The members had good intentions toward him and assumed X would hate them. Hope asks if Zyru is okay, since Zyru and X are childhood friends, and Zyru says X shouldn't be stuck at his level with him because it's better for X, and he's okay with losing the connection, so they can head back. Companionship is complicated, and a person can part ways for this kind of reason too. Pan says this is wrong. How long is he going to bring X-san back here after seeing this guy? Asks Pan what has come over him. Ben says banishing a party member is not a big deal, but banishing a childhood friend is unacceptable. Goblin asks why he's so worried about it. Then he asks him to detain the others. Van. He runs off thinking this is his problem and is probably acting out of selfishness, but still. When childhood friends are involved, he can simply stand by and do nothing. The monsters on the E. He might have been crying. The model. Someone shows Van the man, and Van sees him using his true powers. Van thinks Eeks is already awakening and must be top A class. The monster tells Van Eeks has been like that since the mid-level floors, and Van tells them to step back because he is dangerous. Still, Van isn't sure he can clear the misunderstanding while X is in this state. X angrily says it serves. Those who betrayed him will face his power, and he is going to use this power to make trouble for them. He will understand how he felt and tell him his friendship with Zyru is over. The monster. That floor reports being surrounded by X and unable to retreat. He asks Pan-kun to hurry. X is getting... A strike knocks X out, and the goblin turns to see what happens. On the floor, worried about his power, X says he needs to have a real talk with Zyru. Goblin feels a sense of déjà vu. A man asks X whether X thinks he ended his friendship with Zyru and angrily insists they are childhood friends. Serving bond isn't so easy, Pants, and because he will make them see how foolish childhood friendships are. You will be hurt by Pan. Zyru intervenes and saves X from the trouble he was stuck in. Then they all go out together, combine their strength, and confront Pan for what he did. X, they thought they were holding him back from his true potential, and that is why he banished him. X says he doesn't care about that because they see him as a real man. Someone stepped in to save him. X apologizes for thinking bad thoughts and then says, just wants them all together. Meanwhile, Pan apologizes to Goblin for acting selfishly, but Goblin says he is satisfied because Pan showed skill and did not give up until they reconciled. He says he has a lot of experience with scenes like that and remembers them. Ryuka and he often argued. They always managed to sort things out within a couple of hours. Van says something important came up, so he needs a rain check, but Ryuka says he promised to play Ringo Kishiba Roadway with her. She's ready to pull her first all-night gaming session in a while and tells Harpy-san. Harpy thinks Ryuk is too cute and Van is very unreliable. Harpy says she doesn't know anything about that. Bishi would never let her down unless it was really important. Ryuka asks her how Bishi can be so sure. She says she has known that boy almost as long as she has known her lady queen. About 9 years ago, a man was. Van said someone stowed away in his bat again, and that he had already told him no kids are allowed, and then asked Geeser to let him go. Geeser tells everyone that every month this kid shows up out of nowhere and he'll toss him back up to the surface and asks him to stop because he has somewhere to go. Then it runs from there somehow because back then Van was skilled at getting in without making a mess and sneaking in unnoticed. That changed when he appeared on the lowest floor. This is where he had to mess with it. Van's strength put adults to shame, since he had reached the lowest floor on his own, something almost no one managed. In the end, he didn't win, and the match ended. It ended 1 or 2 hours after it began. He looked ready to faint at any moment, handled the dragon best, and managed to pass by. Back then, he told Mino that, honestly, they were taking a dive so he could get through, and Mino said they should just let him in more easily. Beating Van every single time is wrong. It is an order for her, but she still worries he might get tired of it and stop coming around. She says she doesn't have to worry about that. Then, the monster peeks and sees Van crying. Munoz says he will definitely win next time. He falls apart whenever he's out of sight, and seeing their staged act and greater strength, he wants a real win. Ryuka shows up crying and says he's all beat up. They say their position didn't let them exchange many words, but she became a guide of sorts in a match. Although Van cried many frustrated tears, he never lost his will. With Dragon's help, he made great progress, and about 2 years later, he could face them head-on. Van finally defeated all the monsters, and they could not believe it. He could not believe it himself, and they said he was amazing. The monster promises to give it everything they have from here on. He thinks this might not even be their final form. Okun tells Van that those 3 are really impressive. After hearing the story, Yuka says she has no idea because she never said a word about it, and Harpy says she should know how boys are. He must. There was a good reason for him to go home today too, and most of all, there was nothing he'd rather be doing than spending time with Ryuka. Ruka asks Harpy to tell her more about Van, and Harpy says it would be her pleasure to do so. He's back with the stuff and says he brought the items they ordered. The guild chief thanks him for bringing in the supplies. Van asks if it's not time for him to retire. The chief tells him to shut it since he still has plenty of adventuring left, then asks Van if he packed some meat pies too, and if he's heading out again today, which Van confirms. To meet Ryuka again, he connects with monsters are there, and Ryuka runs toward him from their midst. Van asks what is wrong with her. She tells him he made it and should take it easy, apologizes for yesterday, suggests he have some cookies or a warm bath, and Van asks if she is his grandma. Huka hugs Van and the monsters stand stunned by what is happening. Ryuka tells Van Lees that when he was about 15, he lost use of his sword and was hit by magic, so he couldn't breathe but did not give up. And Van exposes that Harpy Sand made up those stories, which makes her furious. Van studies the books in Ryuka's collection and admits it's a bit unexpected, saying someone told him her shelves focus on banishment and stories where the hero is cast as the villain, and Ryuka replies, that's not true. She keeps what she likes and finds watching a hero fail refreshing, while Van pictures the Dragon Queen leaping out. On the other side, the senpais tell Van that even outside the stories, people don't hear many good things about them, and that they've always gotten special treatment, so even with no demons around, they use it to live in total luxury. Then there's the great hero, said to be the world's strongest and the best among heroes, and he wonders what he is like. Gold steps into the conversation and says that heroes are human too, and that the others are misguided. Reputation is a hero's personal matter, so it would be foolish to make generalizations. They all say they agree with him, and that Gold is quite different from his image. D says a person with the title Great Hero must be strong, and he wants to challenge that hero someday. Van says he is pretty much the opposite of that. He warned him again about the great hero's prominence and wonders if the hero is really that bad. And Van says Goldie mentioned this too, but it could be just a rumor. He feels like he's heard that prominent name before. Van steps outside to look for it and finds a man he does not recognize as an adventurer, so he assumes the man is from another village. Wondering what happened, Van watches the man in front of him, standing dazed. The man remains at the entrance, unsure what is keeping him from going inside. Someone uses him and the man turns around with a big smile. She tells him the dungeon is pretty dangerous and asks if he's all right since he's zoned out. The guy, he's fine, just bracing himself because he's heading straight to the bottom. Van rushes in and feels how much power the man has because he is extremely fast. Inside the dungeon, the goblin wonders what that sound is while he watches the man. Go in there and beat them up. Thanks. The new guy isn't trying to finish off the monsters, but it's a bad idea to mess with him here, and he'll lead him down when the guy in Van Leave, the goblin, says that was insane and asks the other monsters to get him the list of adventures. Find the guy on the list and recognize him, that he is a true hero. Dungeon, Code Red Emergency is now active, and the announcement orders all traps raised to maximum, non-combatants evacuated immediately, and combatants advise to retreat while defending the great. As they get closer to the queen, her bodyguards wait for the great hero to arrive. San vows they will not repeat the mistake they made with Golda-san. They say their opponent is the great hero, the strongest in the world, and assume he is at least on Vankon's level. They're finished now. Mino says they still have to engage with him and should not lower morale. The great hero motivates them, approaches, and makes them vanish. With his sword, the great hero tells Van he is the same as ever and asks if he still does not recognize him. Now I will name who is next in prominence. The crybaby Van was finally recognized. Poo-kun introduces himself and asks where Van has been for the past 5 years. Poo is glad Van remembers him, and Van apologizes because he did not recognize him after so many changes. Van cannot believe they are meeting like this and that he is a hero. Poo says he cannot believe it either, and that he found him here where Ryoka lives. Mino thinks Van knows the great hero, and Van is introducing him to the monsters there. He says this is Poo-kun, his next-door neighbor from his village, and Poo says it is nice to meet them and that he is a great hero. The monsters are worried and shocked that Van met another childhood friend. Lucas spots a cute little dog, and Van points out a red garnet on its head. Ryuka asks Wool where she got it, and Wool explains it belongs to one of her subordinates, who went home to visit his family, so she's looking after the dog. Then Wool asks Ryuka if she can play with the little dog for a bit, and Ryuka agrees. Inside, the dog hides behind the table and asks what is wrong with her because she suddenly is not friendly. It senses this instinctively, and the Dragon Queen is an overwhelmingly superior being. Van picks up the dog and asks if she's okay, and Ruka is impressed. The dog came right up to him and warned him. Van says he takes care of animals a lot at home, and then, Ruka near, the dog is all settled now. The dog got up and everyone did too. It's very cute. And Ryuka are very close while holding the dog, and she says those strange monsters over there are making a lot of noise, and she is targeting their monster bodyguards who are peeking at them again. Years ago in the northern Kara kingdom, in Byakuya village, some guys teased Poo-kun, saying he looked like he would lose again and calling him names while Poo-kun kept crying. Van steps between them with a dragon on his head and tells them not to be mean to Poo-kun at all. Everyone gets scared as Van comes straight at them with the dragon on his head, and after everyone disappears, Van asks Poo-kun if he is okay, and Poo thanks him for saying. Then Poo asks Van what he's doing, and he says Ryuka is fully healed and practicing flying. They might return and ask Poo to go with them. Poo agrees to go with them, and they race to the clearing when the re-wrap starts. Seeing Poo-kun there, she feels very happy because they haven't met in a long time. When they got close, they couldn't recognize each other and asked who the other was, and Van already knew this would happen. He says Van told him she really does have a human form, and that this form is her default, that she has grown up into a real beauty and a princess, and Ryuka asks him to stop because he is making her blush. She says Poo-kun is really different now, and Van says he told her that Poo-kun is the great hero. Ryuka. He says Poo-yun is much stronger than before, and Poo agrees, adding that when it came to messing around, Van was by far the best and was always at the bottom. He refused to be that loser any longer, so 5 years ago he left the village to become an adventurer, inspired by Van's monthly trips to Ryuka's dungeon, and he also remembers up to that point. Ryuka says he worked hard to become a hero, and Poo says that's not quite right. He says that was a bit careless. One day he found a sword along the road. It turned out to be a sacred sword that suddenly gave him the power of a hero. Poo said being chosen as a hero meant he had to register at the capital, and there was no escape. He left just as a major incident was unfolding at the capital. A group freed a demon sealed in the center of the city. He defeated it in 2 seconds, and after that people called him the great hero, though it all seemed a bit careless. Ryuka says he speed ran his development and tells him about it as something great. He is doing his best to be a force for good for the people. This is no laughing matter, but to meet everyone's expectations, he was told to always smile. He says he smiled so much his face is stuck like this now, but Van says it's from stress. Make sure Poo is okay, since the heroes seem pretty disliked. Ryuka says she heard someone say they love seeing heroes get beaten up. Fuse says saying bad things is better than being relied on as a hero and is a true sign of peace. By contrast, many people have accepted him and shown gratitude, and he even met some of them today. In times like these, something that really makes him smile feels so good. They call Pooh that, say he's still a softie, and Pooh asks him to cut it out during the month. Okun says people were watching them, and for a while he worried about what would happen, but thankfully he seemed like a good kid. Meanwhile, Mino-san storms in, saying he's not here to share love, and that he's not here because he liked her first, and the other monsters call him the king of predictability. Mino-san asks what is wrong with that guy over there and says it does not matter if he is from Van's village. Okun says he sounds like Gusan, and Minosan replies they have never heard of him and he should not just show up out of nowhere as a third childhood friend. Regarding Pooh-kun, as he tells himself not to chat with the queen, the harpy tells him to pull himself together. She says it's possible Van is his target. Mino says he is not here for that either. Wool asks Harpy to stop interfering in this and tells they're wrong about them. Harpy says she's fine with anything as long as it's adorable. Mino starts. Crying while saying this made him uneasy at the thought that those two knew the great hero of all things. Okun says they know him because he is their friend, and he is not worried about it. Everyone is asked to take a good look at the queen. She's much closer to Van than usual. It's been a very long time since she's been around any man other than Van, so it's a little risky for her. Van, Pooh, and the others are having a great time talking, and the queen is clearly jealous and cannot hide her love for Van, while Wool tells Okun he has a sharp eye. Harpy says the queen is no good when she's jealous, and Okun says it's nice to see this, so we'll tell them there's no way this is what Minasan described. Mino asks them how they can be so sure, and Harpy tells him to go apologize to Unison. Van asks what's wrong with those guys and tells him not to mind them. They're always like that. He asks whether they always watch over him with that liveliness, and whether he's going to asks if either of them is dating anyone right now. Priyuka he asked where that came from and said they're all at that age, so he wondered if they had a love story, and Mino is getting angry about what he's trying to do, and Ryukata that she doesn't have anything like that. Then the Pooh gets it. As the hero of the land, Pooh must be popular, so people ask about his romantic life. Someone says he's not that popular, and he likes a girl, but they are not dating. Ryuka asks who Umanse is, and he tells her to stop getting so excited about other people's business. To them, she is a member of the party, and it is love at first sight. Okan says it sounds like he already has someone, so that is good. Mino says he might be a player making things up, and Harpy tells him there is something wrong with his brain. Ruka wants to hear the love story from the beginning at dinner, and then they will find a 3-player game to play. Puyun says sorry he has to pass on that because he is in a bit of a hurry today. Puyun stands and tells Van he must quickly unearth Queen Ryuka. Van, furious, moves to defend his childhood best friend alongside the other monsters. Both draw their swords and have a blast. After asking Ryuka to stay back, he asks Puyun what all this means and requests an explanation. His orders were to destroy the Demon King's vessel, the Black Dragon Queen, so he is here to unearth Ryuka. The Black Dragon Queen turned out to be Ryuka, and he had no idea he would see Van on the surface. Pressing his sword harder to defeat Van, he says, coincidence is a load of crap. It's all that's ever happened to him, that he enjoyed talking with both of them. The great hero must eliminate the Demon King's vassals, if it means he has to dig up his friend and eat him. If he must risk his life competing with Van, his anger keeps returning. Striking Puyun with her fist, she tells him to take his drama outside. Van stands there, unsure what just happened, while Ryuko glares at him and asks him to help clean the room afterward because it's all busted. Van looks worried, and she asks what the look on his face means. Van asks Ryuka if she is not worried about Puyun, but Ryuka says Puyun said he was here to unearth her, and Van agrees it made him look bad, so they need to make sure Puyun knows. They told the monsters they would be right back. The monster suggests going back out once they recover. Outside, Puyun rises from the rubble, cracks his neck, and looks ready for a fierce fight. Van feels uneasy because Puyun has no scratches. Ryuka warns Puyun's mind is badly fractured. Puyun brushes it off, saying this happens to him all the time. Van says that's why he worries, and Puyun reminds him they are enemies now. Van still sees him as his childhood best friend. You and he still decide to carry out the duties of a hero, and with that he draws his sword and marches toward Van. Eager to teach Puyun a lesson, she is impressed by how much mana he has. Puyun uses one, the most effective aiming techniques which Ryuka and Van narrowly avoided being unearthed. Buka notes that the cut cleanly went through a demon on the second slice, which amazes her. Annoyed. If you ask Van, he'll say who let him give his technique that crappy name. Ruka told Van not to provoke Puyun, and Van said a single swing has more power than her dragon breath, and that he agreed with Auntie A that Puyun is on another level. Van tries to devise a plan to defeat Puyun from behind him. However, he said awakening this power didn't just affect his mana. It also randomly upgraded his physical abilities. Facing Van, he says he can even run with him like this. That said, Puyun swung his sword at Van, breaking Van's blade in the process. Just before he could finish Van off, Ryuka grabbed Puyun's sword with her hands, making him wonder how a dragon's hide could withstand the scorching heat of his blade. Striking the magic sword fails to break it, and even her power is not enough against it, Ryuku-chan. Ryuaka says they can win this opposition if they break the sacred sword. Irritated, Van tells Ryuka his sword is already broken, so he will fight with his hands. Ryuaka asks him to still take her words seriously. That's enough for the two to stop opposing each other. The corners of his mouth lift even more. Vance suggests Puyun give up, saying they can see. He wouldn't want Puyun to risk his life and says he's fine. He will keep going until Puyun gives up and is willing to be Puyun's opponent for as long as Puyun likes. Ryuka asks Van if she should just stay here since he is taking it like this. Van says this is a serious match, so he will treat it like one. Van tells Puyun said he couldn't put it off any longer and would help Puyun finish this once and for all. Before they could do anything, Golda appeared out of nowhere. When Puyun mentioned it to Van, Golda said he sensed strong mana and realized it was coming from here. He thanks Van for interrupting and asks Van to let him take charge of his opposition. Vanapoli realizes it's Gold, saying he can't compete with him today. Gold says he has come for Puyun. Puyun already knows the legendary man Gold, and Gold tells Puyun he has business with him now. Someone wonders what kind of business Goldie means, and asks whether Puyun did something to upset her. Trembling with dread, Puyun worries he will fail if Goldie takes charge of the opposition. Soon, a very beautiful girl comes in and tells Puyun she was searching the village high and low when she happened to run into her mom and dad by total coincidence, so she tell them everything about him. Then about Goldays. Meeting him was essential to her. She says she is glad she could introduce her partner to him. Meanwhile, this is the girl Puyun likes. In the low-level monster area, the monsters debate whether to go down and help their queen or stay to protect the other floors, murmuring about the decision until a monster named Mino says that from now on, all they can do is trust their queen and the executives, that the great hero and the formidable Van are there, and that the legendary man Gold is also present. So they have no idea what is happening down there and can only imagine the terrible scene unfolding. Down there, everyone is enjoying a delicious meal. Olivia suggests they introduce themselves and opens by introducing her daughter, Electra Munsi, who says she is an attendant to the great hero Prominence, also called Puyun, and handles his personal affairs. Van greets everyone and introduces himself as a prominent childhood friend from his village. And Ryuka says she is Van's childhood friend and also a friend of Puyun, the Black Dragon Queen. He presents himself as a prominent man who is deeply indebted to Electra. Sylvia, she presents herself as Lecter's mother and Goldie's wife. Goldie says he is Lecter's father and tells Puyun he has heard a lot about him. It's a small world. It turns out Queen Ryuka knew her parents and Poo. You too. Ryuka interrupts to say Puyun had earlier said he would unearth her, making everyone. Puyun asks what he means by that. Sylvia says that's a terrible thing to say. Meanwhile, Puyun nervously scratches himself. Van tells Puyun that if it was an order, the blame is not all on Puyun, and asks him to explain why they aimed at Ryuka. Dungeon bosses, the top-ranking monsters whose MP rivals that of heroes, are called the Demon King vessels. His mission is to destroy them to prevent the Demon King's return, because 10 years ago, a hero from the West defeated the Demon King by destroying his body while his soul survived. And that soul is out there gathering power sourced from the King's vessels, which, if sacrificed, will give the Demon King the strength to resurrect, and there is a prophecy about the next Demon King, which Van asks about. Puyun warns that after 10 years in hiding, the Demon King will seize the Black Dragon, return in his ultimate form, and destroy the world's order. The mages of their imperial court prophesied it, but every kingdom is hearing the same things, and Van asks if Puyun means Ryuka when he calls him the Black Dragon. It may not be necessary, but their chief policy is to preemptively nip every danger in the bud. He told the chief he agreed, so he resolved to help Elektra subdue the Demon King's dangerous vessels. That is why he came here today to destroy the prophesied Black Dragon and vanquish it. Puyun asks Puyun whether the only solution is for him to take Ryuka out himself. Puyun says there must be another way. The prophecy will be fulfilled this year if the Demon King returns, and the casualties will make it too late to protect the people, so he must get rid of Ryuka. There's no way he'll Puyun like that, but Puyun says he needs to do it. Golda asks Puyun in the van to knock it off. Saying they will only repeat the mistake of their last opposition, he recommends a fine. Find a solution for everything one at a time. However, he raises a very important question and asks it. What is the nature of Puyun's connection with Elektra? Uschi apologizes to Goldie and says they are in a very important conversation about the fate of the world. But Goldie replies that his loved ones come first, says he sides with Van's camp, and Van admits he is not overly thrilled. Van asks Ryuka if she has anything to say because this is serious. Ryuka tells Van that Elektra has an amazing body and is really cute, and Elektra laughs, says they are making her blush, adds, she got his dad's physique, then stands and tells Ryuka she is much cuter. Sylvia says both of them are cute, and Puyun and Van look at the girl, thinking they are bonding and ignoring everything else. Alexa asks Alexa exactly how she met Puyun. Alexa explains she was left in the care of the Imperial Guild, who had connections while her parents were off adventuring. After witnessing Prominence's victory in the demon incident 5 years ago, she instantly wished to be his attendant. She trained hard for about 2 years and then joined the Great Heroes Party. Even though she traveled the world and fought powerful enemies while all her allies gave up, she sees traveling alone with recognition as a bonus. Finds it very cute, but Goldie is angry at the idea of a lecture rambling on by itself with Puyu. Angry Goldie questions whether it has to be this way, saying those things can't happen and asking to move on. Since that's fine, Puyun asks the lecturer not to give Goldie the wrong idea. Ryuka says their feelings are mutual and asks why they are not going out. Puyun says that as a great hero, he cannot afford distractions from frivolous things. He is bound by many obligations and does not want to drag Electric into this, but Electric says none of those obligations matter to her. Sylvia asks Electra to reconsider because her partner is a hero, and some heroes use their power and connections to live it up and womanize as they please. She then reminds Galda that he said prejudice against heroes is wrong. Galda cannot see Electra being associated with a guy like that. Unable to stand it any longer, he defends his childhood friend Puyun despite his actions and tells him, Puyun is a good man who gives Goldie his word, and as her next-door neighbor he is full of kindness and strong morals. When Puyun was a child, he loved flowers. The village kids, who liked to tease, ruined his flower garden, but he stood up to them on his own. That was very brave of Puyun. He didn't really win because he interrupted and barely beat them up, and when Puyun asked Van to stop, Van ignored him. Van realized during their clash that Puyun was fighting with everything, and his strength isn't just in his reserves even though his skill isn't fully developed yet, showing clear signs of growth, which makes me think Van is becoming Puyun's defender. She agrees with Van, saying that even though Prominence is already the strongest here, he still spends hours studying the blade, which she finds very cool. Whenever a kingdom gives him a huge reward after a mission, he donates the entire sum to hospitals and orphanages, which shocks everyone and leaves them stunned and embarrassed to hear of Puyun's amazing deeds. Someone interrupts and says they're all wrong. He doesn't eat anything special for training, and that much money isn't right for someone like him, so he gave it away. The lecturer adds that Puyun is humble too, which is why she supports him more, and Van agrees. Goldie, confused, asks Van why he is helping Puyun when Puyun is his enemy, and Van replies, Goldie says he may be the great hero's foe, but he's Puyun's friend, and that makes Goldie even angrier. Mino, our champion of pure love, interrupts Goldie to say he believes Puyun is a worthy man for his daughter because of the quality of his life. People see him the same way Electra and Van described, and he has built a trusting connection with Electra, often talking about their chances for a smooth future and about making Goldie wonder if Minnie is truly enthusiastic about it. And this makes Morgan thinks Minnie is a meddler, so he bets this is a scheme to push those two together as soon as possible. Surprisingly, Sylvia likes Puyun too, calling him a nice guy who reminds her of Goldie when they were younger. Gold says he wasn't like Puyun when he was young, and Goldie is angry. Gold has had enough and challenges Puyun, saying Puyun must prove he is very strong or be forbidden from seeing his daughter. Puyun says he is not sure that is a good reason to fight. Van says Puyun is strong, and notes he and Ryuka had to work together to take Puyun down. Luca agrees with Van and tells Puyun this is his chance. Van realizes he still needs to finish the earlier decision. Electra starts rooting for Puyun, and most people support him while Gold opposes him. Puyun gets a chance. They were worried about what to do, and after a while, only Puyun and Van remain in the dungeon as everyone else leaves. Offers Puyun a full apology for everything. Puyun says he should be the one to apologize. It was awful and made everything awkward. Someone asks Puyun what he will do now, and Puyun says he must return to the capital to report on them because they will find out soon anyway. So it's better to clear things up first while Electra says goodbye to her parents, and Golddale is told to tell him if Puyun does anything wrong. Tells Puyun that if others know Golda is on par with the great hero, they will not go after him recklessly. Puyun says sooner or later they will take action to bring down the Demon King themselves, and when that happens, he will come back here too. Surprised, Van tells Puyo he can come back any time because he'll be here. Fearing the Demon King, Puyon says Van would likely feel sorry for the other dungeon monsters if he kept showing up. Then Puyon and Electra say their final goodbyes and leave, which makes Van focus on the Demon King while the monsters clean the dungeon and wish Puyon could help them. After they learned of the Demon King's arrival, the monsters held a meeting. They asked everyone if they knew what today's meeting was about. Mino explained it was about the great heroes who attacked them a few days ago. Those heroes were on another level, and Mino and Van had been completely useless that day. He was determined not to fall behind again. It was embarrassing. The issue was settled for now, but if the great hero returns, the executives will have to train harder to level up. They disagree and say they're here to talk about cow and bird fetishes, shocking everyone. Just now he told me he had been making wild assumptions about Puyun and that he disliked it. He finds Mino's idea of cucking disgusting. Annoyed Mino, although he dislikes cucking as a plot twist and would worry it might happen, Wu thinks it is offensive to assume that in the first place. He asks Mino whether he really believes that would happen, and whether he has so little faith in Van and Queen Ryuka. Crying, Mino says he knows such things are very unlikely to happen, but if once his brain latches onto it for even a second, it becomes all he can think about. He wonders why, since he supports true love, his mind seems to have a will of its own. Annoyed, Kun says Mino's brain is getting cucked by the idea of cucking. Known as Harvey, he tells Mino there is such a thing as tact and asks Mino to keep his unpopular opinion to himself. They will be tarped for misbehaving. He asks Harvey if she has any room to talk. Almost every word she says is an insult, her heart full of anger. Garp insists she's only letting a flood of thoughts about adorable things spill out, while Wool calls it garbage. Carpe calls Orkan a dumb mutt. Raised well, a wholesome environment shaped a wholesome mind. People call him NHK because he is so wholesome, as if meant for a younger audience. Harpy says Mino's extreme obsession with true love and her own existence are unhealthy, and they should support their childhood friends with sincere, wholesome hearts. She asks Will or Kunaguru not to validate her existence that way, grease it with wool, and tell Mino and Harpy to use a little more self-restraint. Angry. Reno asks whether unwanted submission can feel wholesome, calls Wool the king of garbage, and Wool tells Orkun he heard fetishes are usually disturbing, but Orkun says unwanted submission can mean different things. For example, two childhood friends enter a dungeon, a girl and a boy. The girl apologizes to the boy, says she does not want to be in a party with a weakling like him, says she will clear the dungeon alone and tells him not to follow. Then she somehow lets her guard down. After fighting a monster, she gets cornered and pleads with it to stay back, only to find the monsters have already captured the boy. She asks him how he was captured and whether he was trying to save her. The monsters begin to beat him, making the girl cry, and she screams for them to let him go, saying he is very important to her and they can take her instead. After the monsters let them go, it should be a happy ending. Shocked, Wool asks where the happy ending is, since they are traumatized. Aparpe says Orkun is into some pretty dark stuff. It's more than that. Here they should hear some of the other monsters, some like tentacle bondage and some trade bones, and it is hard to choose between irresistible lewdness, adamantine hardness, and marble's elegance. Annoyed Wolf says he is surrounded by freaks he asks to. With the whole dungeon cleared, it's time for him to crack down on this and get rid of these thirsty monsters. But Harpy, this kind of thing is all about charm. Features like big puppy eyes under the arms, tan skin, fangs, and ponytail horns increase the appeal. And fetishistic details are key elements that everyone agrees make their favorites even more alluring. They say they can support their favorite without all this crap, but Harpy replies that digging into the skeletons in the closet because someone is his favorite is part of being a fan, and she says she won't be a fan of the whole world. Van and Ryuka probably have a fetish too, but Will disagrees with her and says they are pictures of wholesome innocence. They will not do anything sexual until they are married. Orkun interrupts and says this has nothing to do with fetishism. I'm checking Van and Ryuka now to see if they have a fetish, and Wool agrees. Ryuka and Van are discussing the great hero in the Demon King, and Ryuka says that since the hero is stuck down here, their only option is to ambush her, as always. Turning to Van, she asks if he's okay, since this is much harder on him than on her because he has known Puyun for so long. Van says he's fine and asks her not to worry. Monsters stare at her. Thaka and Van are on the lookout for fetishes in a soft, sad atmosphere. Wool thinks they should not be doing this, but Harpy insists the two have some kind of fetish, and tells the other monsters to watch closely, paying attention to their looks, expressions, and tone of voice, and using every detail to detect the perversion. Mino asks Harpy if she found anything. Observing this, Harpy wonders if the queen has a collarbone fetish. As she stares at Van's collarbone, Van notices, asks Ryuko what's happening, and Ryuko turns away, concerned. Wool thinks this must be a misunderstanding. Orkun insists there's nothing wrong with a collarbone fetish. Harpy asks Wool to look again because it's so obvious. Van's voice and the popping of the nerves in his arms fascinate Ryuka. She asks if there is something on his face, and Ryuka turns away, denies it, and says it is nothing. He's shocked to find the lady dragon is unexpectedly dirty-minded and wonders if that's true. They were wrong all along. At the Four Idiots private bar, the monsters continue their discussion. Harpy says it is. A universal truth is that morally righteous characters secretly have minds full of fantasies. She asks, he wants to have some drinks now since he has. Will swallows hard, then says that he thinks the first gentle brush of lovers' fingers before they startle back is erotic. Finding it erotic, Mino asks Wool to tell them more, and Wool says he likes tails, finding the queen's tail cute when she gets worked up and it swishes. Harpy agrees and calls the queen's tail cute too, and Orkun says they are exposing everything tonight. The next day, Van returns to see Ryuko, asks about Mino and the other monsters, and says he didn't see them anywhere today. Harpy tells Ryuka he bought Bucky and is excited about the game, while Van and Ryuka wonder what Bucky is. Mino explains it is a party game using Bucky. Mino explains he is a party game using Bucky. I hold the Bucky in my mouth at one end while the other person holds the opposite end, and we eat it together. Whoever pulls away first when it breaks loses. Ryuka asks Mina what kind of game this is, and Mina wonders whether he is trying to screw them. Harpy explains that the winner gets all of next week's snacks, so Ryuka and Van end up playing the game. Both hold the bouquet in their mouths at opposite ends, and Ryuka thinks she is doing all this for the snacks and nothing else, while their heart beat. When the game starts, the Van begins to eat. Turn up the bouquet and close the gap without hesitation, blushing. Ryuka wonders why Van is going so fast. Van walks the dungeon every day, the man who expertly handles 1,000 arrows before their very eyes. The distance between his mouth and his back is no problem for him. This leaves Ryuka with no personal space. Van chomps the baki, thinking there is still plenty of room, while Ryuka panics because Vaughn is far too close, and she tells herself she will be a good girl, that she must pull away or they will end up embracing. She wonders if he plans to make love to her. She's never seen anything like this, but if it's Van, she thinks she'll be okay. However, she ends up snorting. Van is like that. That was very close. Harpy announces that Ryuka wins, having won the opposition but still lost it. On a regular day, Van marches on, defeating every monster in his path to meet his childhood best friend Ruka. He slams, bams, defeats all the high-ranking monsters instantly, so he can hang out with Ryuka and go down to the lowest level of Worm's Hell. Van is a swordsman, but he no longer carries a sword, Mino tells him. Yuka describes how Van defeated them today while unarmed. Van says he has been completely unarmed lately, even though his Sawaro is very strong. Sanders switched suddenly, though. Ryuka says it might be because Van recently broke his sword while fighting Puyun. Mino says he thinks it's just a trial, not an era period for him. It says Van's opponent was a great hero wielding a sacred sword, and no ordinary blade could stand against him. Offers a brief thanks, and decides to make a new super strong sword for Van. We know this is a little too much, but Ryuka says Van has already been to the lowest level about 100 times, so she thinks he has earned a rare item Orca. Says that if Ryuka gives Vana a powerful sword, they will have to suffer. Although he is beaten by him every day, everyone is already happy and all the monsters are ready to help. Mimino says, there isn't a sword around here that matches a sacred sword. Orkin says he knows a man who can make a powerful sword. Among his subordinates is a dwarf who specializes in making these tools, and he suggests hiring the dwarf to make the sword's blade. Smith. Just then, a dwarf barges in front of Queen Ryuka and asks Orkun if he was summoned. Mino Shi. During the dwarf's service, he first becomes a large stone monster, then soon returns to his dwarf form. Dwarf Dwao, head of the traps division, and their tools at the golem manufacturer. That Dwao creates all the traps and combat golems Van has encountered below the... On the 45th floor, Dwao is a true tool specialist who looks more like a scientist than a bladesmith, and seems mad. When it comes to designing tools, he is the best, however. Van destroys his creations every day without breaking a sweat, and he vows he will make the van down himself someday, which raises doubts about whether Orkun is sure about commissioning Dwao to make a sword for Vaughn, yet Orkun says Dwao is a great weapon. He makes tools for his golems and has exceptional knowledge and skill with blades. Orkun says Dwao is the only one who doesn't know about Van and Ryukas' connection, because he has no interest in that. He usually has no interest in making swords for other people, but he'll do it if it gives people like the legendary man and the great hero a taste of misery. Van Battles faced the great hero with a blade he had made. Even though causes Dwao to fire up with that the Van Sword Production Committee has been formed. Wow tells everyone that a sacred sword is the strongest tool a hero can have, and the great hero's sacred sword, Kalinjala, is the best of the best, its enormous mana and heat melting anything that touches it. He asks everyone to come up with ideas to craft a sword that can rival it. First, he says he competes with Van the most and builds a fan-created scene showcasing Van's new sword as he protects Ryuka. It may be surprising, but she does not need protection and can compete with her opponents. Harpy finds this dreamy, but others may agree or disagree. The key is to make a sword that can withstand heat. Everyone came up with an idea for Van's sword. They suggested a super frosty blade that can release cold air useful in hot weather and an ice cream hilt you can eat when tired. The cone part should not be cold, and the ice should be frozen to -100 degrees. Shocked, Harpy asks if he is 23 years old, and whether I know you're a fan of the ice cream. I don't know. 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 Someone says the ice will melt. Harpy replies that they will enchant it to remain frozen forever. She will engrave a power enchantment onto it. Ryoka likes enchantments that hurl a high-frequency shockwave and calls that dreamy. Dwao is... I'm relieved Ryuka finally gets it. When asked, Orca says they don't need anything like that. He asks everyone to look at the monitor and shows in footage from their previous clash, Van is competing with Mino and Mino is ready. He can unleash his full strength. His battle axe is even enchanted, but very menoharpy. His unarmed strikes might as well be enchanted, and when we watch the footage, we'll think Van is a monster. Orkun and Duao exchange smirks. Duao's mood shifts. He didn't expect a Chalcom fanboy and insists Orichalcom should be used for everything, even though it's ridiculously expensive. Orkun calls him a nostalgia-blinded geezer and tells Duao to consider the performance differences. Surprised, Mino asks how they got so heated so suddenly. Harpy says both are notoriously rare metals, and the argument over which is stronger goes on without end. Orichalcum is extremely strong, magic-resistant and lightweight. Mithril is extraordinarily strong, mana-resistant and lightweight. Orkun says the village uses Orichalcum to make a hero's sword. Duao says Mithril is more beautiful because he made it in the first place. Worried, Wool suggests stopping Duao and Orkun first and then thinking about the sword. The figure shows she would recommend Adam and Teen. The three keep arguing, and Ryuka realizes they aren't getting anywhere. It's surprising that she suggests mixing them all. Duao apologizes and says she does not know what they are talking about. Drees, with Ryuka saying, nobody has made an Orichalcum alloy, so heat alone won't work. If they use black dragon scales as the base and forge them with chaos flames to combine everything, they could create the strongest alloy ever. Duao says the black dragon scales and chaos flames are essential, and he adds them. Ryuka's mana is strong enough to hold the great hero sword, and they will fuse these metals with the most powerful magical material, the black dragon scales. Shocked, Ryuka asks whether they want her to give a part of her body to Van, saying that it is gross and like turning it into handmade chocolate. Duao thinks it's the girliest thing he's heard that day, but Ryuka replies that she's a girl. Kunbao stood before Ryuka and said that for Van Sword's sake, all they needed was one scale and a single puff of fire. And with the plan set, Ryuka's team began making swords. They gathered while Ryuka supplied the scales and flames. Duao asked for more firepower and urged her to unleash the flames of fury. But Ryuka said she could not just get angry, so the harpy stepped in to help. Ryuka could mix some sweat into the sword while she's at it. Annoyed, she unleashes the flame of fury and says she'll turn the harpy into a furnace. After so much effort, their first attempt did not go exactly as planned. They kept making mistake after mistake, but they, all in the name of, for their ambition, and for the sake of the Lady Dragon Queen. A few days later, the sword is finally ready. Ryuka's. They spot the sword and think they finally have a winner. The robotic figure says Van will certainly be pleased with this. Ryuka's. She moves to take the sword to Van right away, but Duao stops her and says he put extraordinary effort into making it, so it would not be fitting to simply hand it over. Ryuka decides to let them handle everything because they have an excellent idea. Ryuka watches them and says their ominous expressions give her a bad feeling about this. They built a new floor just to give Van his present. Ryuka tells him she is adding a secret floor in the dungeon that only he can enter under certain conditions. To get in, he must be in a person party. The traps are set accordingly, and a rare treasure is hidden deep inside. For this test, Ryuka and Van will go on the adventure together. Van agrees to the conditions and waits for Ryuka. After waiting a while, Ryuka finally arrives to meet Van, fully dressed. Van is amazed by Ryuka's adventurous look, and Ryuka says she needs to try first to be part of this adventure. As they travel together, adventuring reminds him of when they were little, so he asks Ryuka what treasure to expect. And Ryuka says he will have to wait and see for himself. Just as they step onto the floor, the monsters peek at them. Get excited. A new adventure is about to start. As they step into the new floor's entryway, Van is getting hyped. Ryuka, as far as she knows, she did all this just to give a sword, but it still feels like a special dungeon outing with Van, and the memory of accidentally tripping and falling on Van makes her hope it happens again. You hear a voice and realize the first trap is a wall studded with sharp nails, and Van and Ryuka rush to escape, clearly worried. Van asks why the trap is trying to unearth them. And when Ryuka says she left the traps to Orkun and Khan, he offers to destroy it, but she refuses. Use the nearby exit and run away from the pointed wall. Van gets away, but Ryuka lands in a glue-like liquid. Someone rushes over to check on Ryuka and asks if she is all right, And Ryuka says she is fine because it's only a slime, but that might not be the whole story. The system breaks down. It turns out it's a slime that only dissolves costumes. And Orkun says he had a feeling something like this might happen. So annoyed Ryoka quickly covers herself and decides to leave as soon as possible, while Duao says the queen is being played like a fiddle, and that man is their boss. Against the odds, Ryuka escapes with only part of her costume dissolved, and she says she is worried that she's going through it. Van announces they've already reached the next obstacle, which turns out angry while dealing with this obstacle as they must team up to get through the remaining 4 rom-com traps. Finally, Van reaches the gift, asks Ryuka whether this sword is the treasure, and she agrees. Glancing at them, he thinks this is his time to shine. He hopes that, and reads the inscription that says this. Only 2 working as one can pull the sword out. Instead of a lovey-dovey moment, Ryuka cracks the rock holding the sword, and viva! Van takes out the sword. He likes it, and asks Ryuka if he can keep it. Ryuka agrees, and explains that this is the Azure Dragon Sword Blue Star, or Khan adds that, like the great hero's calendula, it is named after a flower that symbolizes true love. Harpy gets excited, saying that's how the queen feels about Van, and that Ryuka might be asking Van out. Wool tells Harpy she is reading way too much into this. Just when it seems the adventure is over, Duao still has traps left for Ryuka and Van. With that, holding the sword makes everything start to shake violently. Golem emerges from the ground, startling everyone. He says he used the Queen's flames and their leftover metal to build a new Golem G965 model. Built as a simulated great hero, it exceeded expectations. Mino says it should, with any luck, bring Van down here and now, and that in the past 10 years, Van has destroyed almost 1,000 goals. Harpy realizes this is why Duao is so hell-bent on it. Van realizes this is the old man's new golem and decides to test his new sword on it while Duao orders the golem to crush him. The other monsters worry because the queen is present. Van swings the sword and cracks the golem. Surprised by how fast and smooth it moves, Duao is pleased Van likes the sword he built, while a worried Ryuka tells him not to swing toward her and warns the golem is coming from behind. Note that the sword shows no crack even after such a strong impact. Duao was shining intensely at this point. He is proud of his invention. Statin Muthrol, or Calcum. Adam Entite and the Queen's scales were combined without reducing their performance. Duao thinks that we should name it the True Dragon Steel. It even passed the Queen's durability test. Van says the hilt is smooth and easy to grip. Wool is surprised to see Van reviewing the sword in the middle of the opposition. Duao tells the monsters that Kelpie hide is by far the best material for a sword grip. Harpy says Duao is answering Van just as sincerely and can't tell if Duao is happy or frustrated. And, on top of that, the sword resists enchantments. Van manages. Kun proudly tells the monsters that the golem's enchantment creates a shock because of its parry coating, so when a blade strikes it, it unleashes a shockwave. He can control the shockwave at will, and the enchantment is a versatile tool for defense and counterattacks. Those ads take real expertise right now. Let's see if Van can handle it. Mino looks at Duao and thinks he has no chill. Mino. Van is battling the golem and wonders if he can unleash the shockwave. He swings his blade to test it, and decides that the moment it struck, it should send a shockwave from one side to the other. Use his strength here and push it through, just like that. Van delivers a striking slash while still using his fist. Duao the Noid cannot hide his feelings because Van figured out how the sword worked on the spot and immediately put a plan into action. He laughs that this was exactly what he expected and says this is why Van is worth defeating. He vows not to give up and says next time he will bring him down with his strongest golem. At that same moment, the monsters realize that from tomorrow they will be pummeled by that sword, because they were so caught up in making it, they completely forgot. After the opposition, Ryuka asks Van how the new sword is, and Van excitedly says he really likes it, that the sword is great. He learned a new technique and will get even stronger now, while Mino watches Van's excitement and realizes he is already scared. Van smiles at Ryuka and asks if she made the sword just for him. Taken aback, Ryuka asks why he is bringing this up now. The blade is engraved to Van with all her love, and Ryuka, shocked, panics at the monsters. This clarifies there has been no grand gesture. He has simply been coming here unarmed lately, so he no longer has to worry about getting a sword and Van can explore. He was just trying to save money by not buying a new sword because he breaks them a lot. Ryoka thanks her for the gift and says he is very happy about it. Glad that Van likes the sword, she asks him to be careful with it. The monsters are also. Their queen enjoyed a small special outing, so they feel they did an excellent job, and Dwao is happy because he made a new golem. When Mino checks the production cost, everyone is stunned and cannot believe the number. Harpy says the golem must have eaten their national budget. Orkun, furious, blames Dwao for using an alloy and demands an explanation. Dwao says he used the rare metals to do everything he wanted. Then he launches his heart and flees. In the royal capital of the Karich kingdom, the great hero Puyun returns, and people who know his fame respect him, offering fresh fish, flowers, and other gifts, while those who do not know him call him a villain and suspect he is up to something. Fed up with people who call Prominence a bad guy, she decides to teach them a lesson. But every time Puyun stops her, saying this is all part of his job, he reminds her they are here to tell the king what happened in the dungeon. Standing face to face with the king in all his majesty, commends Prominence and Electra for their last mission, to explain what happened when the king's head. 7 heroes. K-Fate says he appears to have failed to defeat the Black Dragon. That would put them in serious trouble if true. They ask what happened to the man who was his equal. Someone like him would never show mercy to the end. The prophesied Black Dragon must be destroyed. The 7 are here. The heroes ask Prominence for an explanation. They are shocked to learn that the Black Dragon was his childhood friend. Worried, they ask Prominence to hang in there because it may be very difficult for him. Concerned, Prominence reminds the 7 heroes that they are still in his majesty. The king cries that he accidentally ordered Prominence to unearth his childhood friend. He apologizes to Prominence, clarifying that it was never his intention. The 7 heroes mutter inside the dungeon, outraged that they had gone completely under the radar. He explains the dungeon holds at least 2,000 monsters, and that the elite executives are on par with the Demon King vessels. The Black Dragon is a given, but the real problem is Van Sirius, the childhood friend of both him and the Black Dragon. 7 heroes are stunned to find Van matches the great hero, the world's strongest warrior, and they look likely to be annihilated. They still have to try. The prophecy that the Demon King will return comes true in a year. His Majesty asks whether their kingdom is doomed. Kafade asks His Majesty not to speak so casually. He says Van is the main problem, despite his strength. They won't even get close to the Black Dragon unless they deal with him first. The Majesty asks to bring Van to their side. That's not possible. Van will surely become their enemy the moment Ryuka targets them. The Majesty believes there is no effective way to compete with them. Prominence asks the Majesty not to win. Despite Van and Ryuka being his good friends, he has sworn an oath to protect this kingdom and its people. Next time he will act without hesitation. The rest are shocked by Prominence's words. Kafid praises Prominence for his truthfulness. Kafid asks Prominence for any information that might ease the competition. Kafid asks Electra if she gathered any intel, and Electra agrees, saying she liked the people so much that she couldn't bear to compete with them now. She was even given the Lady Dragon's cookies as a souvenir. The 7 heroes think accepting food from enemies is risky, but the Majesty eats the cookies anyway. Kafade, annoyed, asks Electra if she has anything concerning Van in the Black Dragon, and Electra says she does, that the 2 of them are in love. His Majesty requests more details from Electra. Ryuka's feelings are unmistakable now, and Van's are too. He's gone down to the dungeon's lowest level every month for 10 years without fail, so Majesty believes Van's feelings must be very serious as well. And with that, Electra completely takes over When they hear about Van and Ryuka's love story, the 7 heroes tell Kifid that listening to that gossip is exhausting and wonder how Prominence handles it. But Kifid says the news could be useful because those young feelings can be used to take down the enemy from the inside and surprise everyone. Prominence then interrupts Kfade, saying, this is not what a hero does, and that no matter how indebted he is to her, he will not let her do it. One of the 7 tells Prominence, there is no use getting worked up, And Prominence replies that this is why she is 30 years old and still has no one to rely on. An excellent senior but a failure when it comes to love, which makes an angry K-Fade tell Prominence to watch his mouth. If carrying out missions comes before everything else for them as heroes, they have no time for trivial distractions like love. Electra disagrees with Kafij and says it is possible to give your absolute best to both love and duty, just like she and Prominence do. Kaft says she does not approve of their association, which angers Electric, who says Kaft sounds like her papa, and adds they met with her parents, so embarrassed Prominence asks Electra not to discuss that part. She explains Ryuka said they'd make a good partnership, which makes Prominence blush, while the other heroes tease him for getting too cozy with the enemy and ask if that's what he likes about Electra. The mages. He also tells Prominence he's rooting for him. Their #1 supporter is right here. The message says the Demon King's return is imminent, and they must ensure they defeat the Black Dragon, who is a vessel. Launch a top-secret investigation into Van and Ryuka. She directs everyone to take the necessary steps to prepare for the upcoming opposition and to boost their competitive strength. The hero from the West, who defeated the previous Demon King, and his comrades summoned them long ago. The heroes are shocked because those are great contacts to have, but another hero reminds them that they were the one who fought the last Demon King. Cafe agrees but reminds everyone she lost back then, and moves away. Kafide stops midway and asks what his problem is. Dominance attempts something involving Ryuka and Van, but Kafir. Fade cuts him off and asks if he wants to spare them. This is what he's been talking about all along, he says. She tells him he must set his personal feelings aside to be worthy of the Great Hero title. Romance still says he will defeat Van and Ryuka as the Great Hero. As the regular Van's neighbor, Prominence asks Okfad to find a way to stop the prophecy without harming either of them. There's no way through this without someone getting destroyed. She asks Prominence to realize how little time they have left. They will do their best within their limits. She says keeping up the appearance of being friends isn't her top priority, but she'll keep it in mind. There is one condition. She displays 3 portraits. To the right stand 3 women, the cabinet minister's niece, the baroness's younger sister, and the daughter of the neighboring kingdom, and from them she will choose a spouse for the great hero. But for now he must carry out his duties, and she will make him wait about 10 years for the marriage. Shocked, Prominence asks Kafade if she is skipping steps. Electra hears and says she will not allow this, claiming to be the daughter of gold and of the legendary man, and to have prestige. Kafide tells Electra to be silent. The Majesty interrupts, and asks Kafide if she is trying to get on his bad side, since he supports Prominence and Electra, and tense Prominence feels the corners of his mouth freezing up again. On the 45th floor of Dungeon's Hell, the veteran Inferno Ogre had long burned as guardian, defending the floor from adventurers, but now he has become the boss of Ogre Organ's dungeon. The 4 idiots had won the opposition, leaving the floor guardian position vacant, and monsters of the next generation gathered to choose a new guardian. A few days later, Orkan decided to hold a selection exam to nominate the guardian of floor 45. Each floor boss can nominate 1 person he names, of the monsters for which he was nominated by him. Please wish the new guardian Pan the best of luck, since he is known as the rising star of the lower floors. Reluctant to be the guardian, he couldn't refuse. With that, in that selection exam, he still wonders how things ended up like this. It's his own fault for enjoying being both a monster and an adventurer. Pan stands face to face with a self-proclaimed monster named Lich. Lich is surprised to see a low-ranking monster in a place like this. He asks Pan if he is Gob's favorite. Then he laughs. People say Pan has the guts not to be intimidated by him, but he does not belong here. The next exam is aimed at an elite like him, the current boss of floor 40. We'll ask Slitch not to badmouth everyone. While they talk about each other, Lich asks Wool if he is all right. Then he sneezes and says he has had a cold since yesterday. Steps in and announces that the selection test to choose the next boss of floor 45 will begin to prepare for the return. Facing great heroes and foreign invaders, the dungeon must strengthen its defenses. Monsters say the 45th floor has always been an impenetrable barrier to adventurers, with only a few exceptions, and those exceptions are problematic. So they hope the new shield will come from among the nominees. The guardian of this floor needs the power to overwhelm an upper-ranked class adventurer party and to instill a sense of despair that prevents them from advancing. The tests will require the monsters to show their abilities. Forkin says these golems match an A-rank party in strength and ability, and contestants will be judged on how artistically they subdue them. Wormhell's rules state points are deducted for causing serious damage. The creator Duao warned he will unearth anyone who destroys his golems. Mino says the test starts now and asks the monsters to step forward when their name is called. The test begins with a half-human, half-spader entering first and destroying the golems. Then a three-shaped snake monster arrives and easily destroys the golems. Lich's turn proves quite good but is heartbroken. That lick has some personality flaws. It's almost Pan's turn. Worried that becoming boss will leave no time to play with Ryuka or to keep adventuring, he considers finding a way to fail, but failing on purpose would be rude to God who nominated him. Van wonders if it's okay for a newbie like him to take this exam. That's what God would say if he failed. He never expected him to pass. After all, the worm's hell is full of talented monsters. He felt bad about nominating Pan without asking, but he thought it would be a good chance for Pan to gain experience. After that, Panda decides to do his best even if he fails. He will still give his best even if he fails. He should compete as he normally does, without unearthing the golems, like when he visits Ryuga. Unleashing his full power, he sends the golems into the air. He realizes he messed up. Mino consents. Pan is already Van, and he realizes Mino and the others already know his moments. Fine. They may have figured out who he was. With the golems defeated, the monsters praise Pan for his success. Mino points out. The golem took almost no damage, which earns style points, and Van is surprised no one noticed who Pan was. He says he's that bad, asks why Pan looks so down, and the goal is announced, that the first test is over. After some calculations, 3 monsters have passed the test. The Hydra on floor 36 makes 1 Pan. All 3 will face a second test, an interview tomorrow, and the chosen one will become the new boss of the 45th floor. Ryuka says she will be the examiner for tomorrow's interview. Ryuka tells Van she will be swamped tomorrow, and Van says the same. But Ryuka looks at Pan and asks why he is so pale. And while they talk, Mino and the other monsters argue about the test. Mino is surprised Hydra passed, noting their movements are sharper than usual, and that their lich is best for versatility. Wool says it has to be Pan from floor 1 since Gob's endorsement matters, but Harpy says they cannot play favorites. Van wonders what he will do tomorrow. Shocked by the test, she calls it lame because no one noticed her true identity. Monster enters and asks Hydra, also known as Oju, if they are doing this. Oju agrees and says Ryuka will be there tomorrow as an examiner, so this is the perfect opportunity. Queen Obsidian, who destroyed her clan, will never forgive her. Oju says the worm's hell belongs to the poison dragon princess Venora Vermilion. The next day, the selected monsters are asked to introduce themselves in order, and Ryuka immediately recognizes Van, wonders why he is here disguised as a monster, and joins the interview. Only Ryuka has noticed him. He feels almost relieved and hopes to explain things to her later. First, Lich introduces himself as the one from floor 40. For Pan, Van looks at Ryuka with a strange smile and wonders what that expression means. Unaware of Van's plans, she enjoys watching him panic and keeps going. Van thinks Ryuku seems to be enjoying seeing him in a tight spot. When it's his turn, Pan is asked to introduce himself, and he quickly introduces himself as Pan in a low voice while almost uttering his real name. This makes real. Go laugh a little. We'll ask later. Nervousness shows in his voice. Harpy also tells Pan he will not make it as a monster, and that is true in every dungeon. During the interview, he asked the first question, which is, when they become boss of floor 45, what is their plan for running it? He starts with Lich. He says he'll first find cute girls and form a harem. Next, he'll decorate the floor with a Lich-themed palace. Mino is surprised. If he gets promoted from being the boss of floor 45 to floor 45, a harem will no longer be just a dream. But Kun says that won't matter, and tells Lich to improve his personality before he improves his rank. Mino says harem characters are unacceptable. He argues that typical harem endings treat childhood friend types unfairly. He only approves routes that make childhood friends the favorites. Harpy reminds Mino that he is revealing his desires to make him stop talking. Orkin says they are not asking about Lich's desires, but about the opposition's plans for the floor. Lich says that, using bones, if he is targeted by a rocking rhythm, it will break the adventurer's souls. Kun says Lich has the skills, but his narcissism is a problem, and he lacks the sense of responsibility expected of those who serve the Lady Dragon Queen. Harpy suggests assigning him to the lower floors. Shocked, Lich demands to know what Harpy means. He tells Pan to come forward now, and Van wonders how to create a good working environment like on the first floor, but then realizes he is supposed to fail the test. He thinks doing the exact opposite of the first floor will leave a bad impression. He says he will just wait for the opposition to come. Wool is surprised because Pan is the complete opposite of Lich. Orkun says that after defeating countless monsters, the adventurers are wounded but press on and then see what awaits them. The monsters are happy to hear Pan's answer and somehow take it positively. He says she heard that Pan is working on the first floor and asks about his working conditions or if there are any complaints. He says there are no complaints. The leader, God, and the other monsters are very kind. It is a fulfilling place to work. He adds, when he started he was a rookie who did not know his right from left, but God provided clear guidance on analyzing opponents, competing, losing properly, and handling adverse conditions, and that guidance has been a great mentor to him. Ryuka now wonders what Van has been doing in secret all this time. Pants. He says that thanks to his time on the first floor, he appreciates the monster's hard work and attentiveness. To love this kind of dungeon and everyone in the worm's hell even more. Ryuka spat the water out of her mouth, making the other monsters wonder if she's fine, and hadn't expected such a beautiful reply from Van, while Wool wonders if Ryuka caught a cold too. Now I'm crying and saying that Pan is a very good kid. She wonders about this dungeon, and the floor 45 she wants doesn't have any shallow nonsense like that. She will revive the Poisontain area, Dragon's Sea. Ode blood here. Van says he has never heard of this level. Lich tells Pan it was the old floor 45. Poison monsters once ruled it, but when the Lady Dragon Queen took over, she shut it down for being too dangerous. Orkin tells Hydra they've already decided not to use poison against the adventurer anymore, and he will ask why she would want to revive that position. She says she will reclaim her pride and rise beyond floor 45. A hell of worms, keep that in mind. A blast goes off, leaving everyone stunned. Terrified Lich clings to Pan, asking what is happening. Mino excited. He warns that the smoke comes from the poison and tells everyone to fall back. OJU grabs Ryuka. All the venomous creatures from Worm's Hell have arrived. Ojo introduces herself to Ryuka as Venora Vermilion, the poison dragon princess who will defeat her and take over Worm's Hell. Duca and the others are stunned to see Lady Venora standing before them. She is the poison dragon lord, the former Dragon King Vermilion's aide and only daughter. He is angry to see the rebellions breaking out like this. They are about to step forward and compete when the poison monster warns them that if they try to damage his poison smoke, he will spread the poison through their bodies and asks them to stay right there and keep quiet. Ryuka stops him and says this is between Venora and her. Venora says she has waited for this moment, that she disguised herself as Hydra to catch her off guard and has now cornered her. Ryuka says this is nothing and hardly counts as being cornered. Venora says she doubts Ryuka will still be able to say that after she exposes her secret to the human called Van. Ryu could reveal it during the dungeon's opposition. Only a select few may approach the Dragon Queen's chambers. Van, someone her age, has been entering Worm's Hell for years, and no one knows how far he has gone through the dungeon. Nora says that once she connected the dots, the answer was here. She says she finally found Ryuka's weakness, asks Ryuka whether she and Van are lovers, shocking everyone. Venora said everyone is not there yet. She claims Ryuka mistreated the poison monsters while living a lovey-dovey life with a human enemy, and says Ryuka is unfit to rule this dungeon, so she will take over. Ryuka, make Worm's Hell truly powerful angle. Ryuka shifts into her dragon form and says she and Van aren't seeing each other or anything like that, and both are furious at Venora for what she has done.